Murphy Goldsmith, and Sandra Figueroa Villa. Today, the Police Commission and the community will learn about the efforts that the Los Angeles Police Department and their city and county partners, including the Office of the Mayor, Los Angeles Board of Public Works, Department of Sanitation, Department of Transportation, the City Attorney's Office, the Los Angeles Homeless Authority, and from the County of Los Angeles, the Department of Mental Health, regarding their combined efforts in dealing with the challenging social and human issues arising from homelessness in our city. The Commission has also invited 3 community agencies who are actively involved in this effort to provide their public comments. These agencies are the Inner City Law Center, Homeless Healthcare LA, and the Los Angeles Community Action Network. We must conclude our meeting today no later than 12 noon, since there's a City Council committee hearing that this room has to be transitioned for. Commissioners Figueroa Villa and Commissioner Goldsmith, thank you for your leadership on this issue and for convening today's meeting. Commissioner Goldsmith, do you have any introductory comments that you would like to make?
Thank you. As many of you know, this issue is close to my heart. My brother has often experienced homelessness and mental health issues throughout his life. When I did a ride-along with the West Bureau Hope Team in Olympic Division, as we visited encampments lining the sidewalks, I saw my baby brother behind the eyes of each person we encountered. I owe it to him and to everyone like him to do my part to ensure that we treat each person experiencing homelessness with dignity and respect, and that we work together toward long-term solutions. I want to thank you all for being here. It is important that we all keep the public engaged in addressing this important issue through meetings like this. The goal of today's meeting is for the Commission to gain a greater understanding of what people are feeling on the streets and what challenges our officers and others are experiencing when it comes to assisting people and communities experiencing homelessness. The work you are all doing to not just manage but to end homelessness is incredibly difficult. I want to personally thank the LAPD, the leadership, and the rank and file, whose dedication and commitment are changing lives every day. It is often thankless work, but you do it anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have some words? Commissioner Figueroa Villa?
So I wanted to thank Chief Beck for your leadership, as well as the leadership of the department in aligning the LAPD's priorities and actions with the mayor's goal of not just managing homelessness in Los Angeles, but ending it. Especially thanks to our president, Matt Johnson, for having the foresight and really recognizing the need to coordinating homeless services in the city with our commission and the police department and the city, and setting up this subcommittee and appointing us to this subcommittee. It's very important work, so thank you. The LAPD has been a critical partner in developing and implementing ambitious programs designed to engage and connect homeless Angelenos to the housing and services they need. We would like to especially recognize the leadership, commitment, and dedication of the department's homeless coordinator, Commander Todd Chamberlain, several members of his team, Sergeant Gento Winter, and Officer Monique Contreras, and all the officers and supervisors assigned to the homeless outreach and proactive engagement teams. The HOPE teams have been one of the mayor and department's key achievements over the last year, and this program could not have happened without Commander Chamberlain. This incredibly difficult work depends on a level of trust with our homeless residents that is built over hours of patient conversation and contact. It's not easy work, and we are all grateful that the department has made addressing homelessness a priority. Commander Chamberlain is doing extraordinary work, turning hopelessness into hope and bringing the possibility of change to our streets. The accountability and openness of the department has helped it become a real leader in our city's efforts to help people get off the streets. The leadership shines across the nation as well. The LAPD is only a handful of American law enforcement agencies with a policy guiding officer interactions with persons experiencing homelessness, a policy effort led by this commission. And I do got to say that I did go out with the HOPE teams in the Valley. I believe they were the first, back when we first started. And I was really impressed with the work and that we really got it. And the families that we were interacting with and placing into homes. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, let's begin with Commander Todd Chamberlain, who will also introduce the city and county team who will be joining him today.
Excuse me, sir. Can the record please reflect that Commissioner McLean Hill is now present?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Commission. Thank you very much for this opportunity to come and talk with you and kind of hopefully give some information and have some discussion about where we are moving and what we have done regarding our homeless issues and our homeless policies within LAPD. I'd like to start off first. Thank you very much for your support, and then also I'd like to truly thank Chief Beck. Many of the things that you're going to hear today are basically the foundation of his vision of what he saw was a need, and then it was best of how we could utilize our resources, our staffing, and our personnel to fulfill that need. So with that, a lot of what we are doing, it is not based on one person. It is truly based on a collaboration that goes far outside of just merely LAPD. Without question, the relationships that have been established, the connectivity that we have had with entities that traditionally might not have been considered partners in law enforcement, I think have really helped reach a new standard of service to the community and all the community, both our homeless population as well as the community that is impacted by the issues surrounding the homeless population. The biggest part of that, again, has been those relationships and the understanding that if LAPD's work in the homeless population was based solely on what was going to occur with this badge, it would be a very, very difficult task. A lot of our officers, myself included, when we started this, do not have the subject matter expertise to realize how many different entities, how many different groups are willing to support and serve. And so again, that partnership and that relationship with groups such as LASA have been pivotal in allowing our officers to achieve a level of service that before that time wasn't there. And then also when you look at our homeless services, I think it's also important to look at where we are at as far as cleanups and as far as the standard of living and the quality of life in the communities, and how to ethically and constitutionally and properly address those huge issues that go with those homeless encampments. And again, that's where the partnership with LA Sanitation comes into play. I think it's important too, we're about a year and a half almost into this process now. We were started turning over these groups and entities. I think it's important too to realize that what we kind of take for granted now, it wasn't really there. The relationship, the communication, the conversation wasn't even there maybe a year ago. All the groups that are involved in this, we might all have different ideologies, but our primary hope and our primary goal is service. And that was something that was reflected by what Chief Beck demanded when this first rolled out, is that we are committed to service, not just merely enforcement. And so that is exactly how we move forward on this. We have a PowerPoint presentation. You have the slides on it, and then the group will be able to see. But what this will do is give a background, and then after we give a background historically of where we are as far as LAPD, that's when we'll call up the partners, and they can articulate out and discuss different aspects of what they are doing as well. Again, when you look at what we have completed in about a year, I just want to go over it generally for everybody. And again, it took a lot of people to make this happen, but you look at a collaborative effort and a collaborative approach. There was a homeless policy, first responder training, new training requirements, expanded mental health intervention training, citywide HOPE teams got set up, centralized resource centers, homeless CommStat, jail inReach, motel vouchers. We're getting ready to institute Narcan training for LAFD, and I'll talk more about that later. We also have a pilot program for animal services, and then a collaborative approach with the city attorney's office where we're trying to do an alternative prosecution program as opposed to strictly just citations and putting people in jail. So again, that's basically what has happened, and when you look at that on a sheet of paper, it doesn't sound like a lot, but that was a heavy lift, and it took a lot of individuals, and it took a lot of support and collaboration to make that happen. When you look at the mental health and the homeless, again, I wanted to go over some different things that do relate to that in our department, in LAPD, and then later on we'll have some of those subject matter expertise come up and talk about it. The SMART team, which stands for System-Wide Mental Assessment and Response Team, again, they're not specifically designated to the homeless outreach. They are more for people that are in critical crisis across the board and mental health issues experiencing it. And they don't focus solely on the homeless, but they're there as kind of a all-inclusive for our patrol officers that have any kind of dealings with people that are basically in crisis. And we'll have them talk in a little bit. The reset team is something that works specifically in Skid Row area, and that reset team is assigned out of Central area. The reset team stands for Resource Enhancement Service Enforcement Team. It originally kind of started as SCI, which was Safer Cities Initiative, and then it transitioned to the reset team. The big part of the reset team is that, again, it is focused merely and solely on the area which is considered the box or Skid Row, which is about less than a quarter of a mile, about 4 city blocks in downtown Los Angeles, and that is their sole purpose and their sole function. The HOPE team, again, is homeless outreach and proactive engagement. The HOPE team focuses specifically on our homeless issues surrounding the city of Los Angeles, and it is focused all primarily with the collaboration of LAPD, LA Sanitation, and then also LASA. Again, for the HOPE team, the big thing when we crafted the HOPE team and when it was framed out and when the mission was given to us, we wanted to make sure that it wasn't, again, based solely on enforcement, but it was based on the idea of having opportunities to have impact on people's lives. And what I mean by impact on people's lives, I mean not just the homeless individuals, but also the community. That's one of the hardest parts, I think, about dealing with the homeless population and dealing with the issues related to homelessness, is that for law enforcement, we're always kind of right in the middle, because there's some groups that think we do too much enforcement, think we do too much contact, think we're out there too aggressively or proactively. And then on the other side, there's other community groups, there's businesses who think we do too little. And so for law enforcement to try to handle this social problem in an effective and a constitutional and ethical way, that's a very difficult place to be. So that's why, again, we wanted to have specific teams that would look at both ends of the spectrum, both ideas, both concepts, and make sure that constitutionally, ethically, morally, as well as just quality of life type issues, we are addressing these problems correctly and properly. The first thing that we had to do as an organization, which was not been done before, and again it was done a lot with the help of Commissioner Figueroa Villa, was try to frame out a homeless policy. The homeless policy was imperative. We really did not have one before, and for us asking our officers to go out and have contact with the homeless individuals, to work in that arena, to work in that environment, it was as important as any other policy or procedure that we have in place. The way the homeless policy was framed out, though, is that it was framed out, again, and it's been said before, but it was framed out in the term of compassion. Compassion, again, for the homeless population, but also compassion for the individuals, the communities, the neighborhoods that are impacted also by the homeless issues that go with that. And really what it does, it wasn't a mechanical thing that told our officers how to do A, B, or C when they're in contact with homelessness or with a homeless individual, but it gave more of a philosophy. It gave more of an idea of what the expectation of this organization, what the expectation of this chief is, and how we should incorporate that into our daily practices. And really to get this conversation going was really important, because to be very honest with you, a lot of the HOPE team, a lot of the education stuff that we're talking about now is stuff that is going to be generational. It's going to be something that trickles down into the officers that are here long after many people that are in these seats are gone. And that's really the sustainability of being able to keep that philosophy, to keep those ideas up and going, is really what that policy and that procedure was based on. Another thing that we knew we had to do fairly quickly was actually get a true count of what type of issues are impacting our homeless population, and also what type of issues are impacting our community. And by doing that, we had to make sure that we changed our MO coding, or our modus of operandi coding, so that we could get clear numbers and some good data about what is occurring, what type of crimes, who's being victimized, who's being criminalized, so that we knew, again, that's the big problem that goes on with the homeless population, is that they're not the ones strictly involved in criminal activity. They're often the ones that are victimized within those encampments. And so that was something that we really wanted to have a measure of and an idea of. And until we changed the MO coding, we really did not have that specific information. The only way that officers tracked and the only way that our record clerks tracked our homeless population and crimes related to them, whether they were victimized or whether they were involved in it, was through a code that was, when they did their field interview cards, was writing down 1942. 1942 on the address portion basically meant that individual was homeless. But that was really kind of bad science, because what that allowed to have happen also is that if somebody didn't talk, if you're in the cage with somebody, or if you're in the holding tank with somebody and you're trying to process them for a booking and they're not talking or communicating, you might write down 1942. And so it really didn't give specific information about our MO codes and if the homeless population was involved or was victimized. And so that was something that we really needed to change also. Another thing that we knew we had to work on immediately was our training. The one thing that I will tell you without question, again, like I said, that law enforcement is kind of in the middle of this whole homeless endeavor and this whole homeless issue, which is where we want to be and where we think we can achieve. It was also related to our training. We knew that our training was not perfect, like many other aspects of what we do, and even after we go through this is still not a perfect system. There is still a lot of opportunities for growth. There's still a lot of opportunities for movement. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for a lot of new people who come up through here to have fresh eyes on this and say, where can we do better? Where can we fix things? But one thing that we knew we had to fix was the training of our individuals related to the homeless population. And so that's one thing that we did, is that we actually built up a system on our lands now where officers can go get resources that they might not have ever had before. And I'm going to call my partner up, Monique Contreras. I don't know where she's at. I'm going to have her come up here real quick, and I want her to talk about the land-based homeless system on what's on lands. I think it's really important to hear real fast. She's the one who crafted it out and put it on the market, and it's a really good practice. Yep.
Good morning.
Good morning. Senior Lead Officer Monique Contreras. So what you're looking at here is a page that can be found on LAPD's internal info web. And it's a centralized homeless resource center that provides information on anything homeless related to, say, orders, notices, on homeless policy, MO, current updates on 5611, 8502, enforcement policy and procedures. But most importantly, it also provides information on how to contact our HOPE teams. It also gives information on CES contacts, homeless service providers, and shelter information as well. So just to give you a brief example, if an officer was looking for information on 8502, they could go to the enforcement section. They could click on 8502 and they could pull up things such as flyers that they can provide the community on 8502, frequently asked questions, the ordinance, and of course our 8502 maps that are updated, actually updated ongoing. So through the collaboration with LASA, City Attorney's Office, sanitation, and so forth, all this information gets put into one resource center, and it gives the officers an opportunity to go to one spot where they can obtain this information and just be more productive in the community in dealing with the homeless.
Thank you. Just to acknowledge, too, again, she has done an incredible job. The staffing that we have is Sergeant Jenna Winters there, and then Monique Contreras. And when you look at the population, the size of the homeless in the city of Los Angeles is roughly about 26,000 people. To have this team make this happen is an incredible thing, and really speaks volumes about them. So thank you so much. With that, also, when you look at the training that was needed, again, I can't stress again how important training is to our officers, because the comfort level of dealing with the uniqueness and the situation that goes on with the homeless population is huge, because it's not just dealing with the person, but it's also dealing with the person's belongings and making sure that the person gets the services that they need or gets the outreach that they need. So again, the problem is very complex, and for our officers, a lot of them are committed to it, but then again, I think we also have to realize that for our patrol officers, if they're working 3A31, they jump in a car at the beginning of the watch and they hit their computer, their system, and it goes on, their queue gets filled up fairly quickly, and they're bouncing from calls to calls to calls. And so being able to give them additional training, additional comfort, hopefully will relieve some of the stress and the anxiety they have in dealing with this unique problem. That's one thing that we knew we had to get better at. We knew we had to improve our training so that they feel more comfortable working in that arena. The other aspects of the training besides the LANs, which is again available 24/7, we wanted to start a program where our senior lead officers again felt a lot more comfortable in dealing with the homeless issues that they're confronted with. The way we did that is we did a cross training where we had senior lead officers, say they're from Topanga, they would come into reset, and then a reset officer would go back to Topanga, and they would again cross-pollinate and basically learn each other's trade crafts. And for those senior lead officers, that's a huge aspect, because when they come to Skid Row or they come to reset, they're getting a crash course on the issues related to the homeless population, how to effectively deal with it, what services are available, how to work with the property issues, how to work with LA Sand, and then they can take that back to their area, their command. So since we started that, that's been over a year now. We have done cross-training with over 44 officers who have switched back and forth from all of our 21 different commands, and that's been very positive. Also, the senior lead officers, we knew that we had to keep them up to speed on the information and the details of what's unfolding within the homeless community and the homeless population, our homeless endeavors. And so we have met with all the senior lead officers. Operations South Bureau is going to be our last one, which is scheduled for the 26th. And with that, again, that same collaborative effort is demonstrated to them. They get the opportunity to see the relationship the department is making with LASA. They get the opportunity to see the collaboration the department is doing with LA Sand, with the city attorneys, with the mayor's office. And that's imperative, because when they see that collaboration, they realize that it's sustainable and they realize that it's real. It's not just discussion points or talking. And again, they know that that yoke of responsibility when they have to contend and work with the homeless population and the homeless issues does not fall solely on their shoulders or strictly on this badge, but it's a collaborative effort across the city boundaries and entities outside of the city as well. We also did first responder training. There's 851 officers who completed that as of 2017. And then also, one thing that we had a huge opportunity on recently based upon our partnership with LAFD was getting Narcan. Narcan is a blocking, and I think it went before the commission about a week ago. It's a source that blocks, and it's an inhibitor for an opioid or a heroin overdose. And again, when you look at our population related to our homeless, a lot of the issues that they have is mental health, but then also a lot of that issue is also narcotics related. And so by providing this Narcan to our officers, we're going to start with a pilot program that's going to roll out specifically with our HOPE teams and with the reset, so it will be a citywide program. We hope to have the opportunity to stop some of those issues that are going on in someone's life and actually do service that has not been present before. Our mental health intervention training, again, I'm going to call up our MHIT team. Sir, if you could come up real quick. And if you could talk about the MHIT training, how you're working, and then also talk a little bit about the SMART team, if you could, at the same time.
Good morning. I'm Detective 3 Paul Sherry of the OIC of the Case Assessment Management Program, part of MEU. The MHIT training is a 40-hour training, and as year-to-date right now, we've trained 1,184 LAPD officers in this training. It started in June of 2014, and now we are, every 2 weeks, we're having this 40-hour training, and it includes homelessness, and all the HOPE team officers are attending this training. It teaches de-escalation, empathy, awareness, legal aspects. Also, it goes into, we do site visits to mental health institutions, and so the officer can see firsthand on what happens after they place somebody on a hold and they try to help them. The SMART team, as Commander Chamberlain said earlier, we're not specifically for homeless, but if somebody is in crisis and they're mentally ill, and that's when the SMART team gets involved and we help get them placed in the proper location. We like to put them in the least restrictive place possible. We don't use jail as a deterrent, but we will use the criminal justice system for those people who are long-term problems, who tend not to want help. We keep working that program and see if they can do get help. We are also, every other week for 3 days, we are training every single FTO, Police Officer 3, in the field, in 8-hour class for mental health awareness, and then this way they can pass it down to their police officer ones who are just out of the academy. The MHIT also does right after the officers are getting off of probation, they all come back for their 2-week training, and they're going through the MHIT. So they're still fresh in their mind, and then they can also pass that down to their officers that they work with. It's next. We would love to train everybody on the department, but we're hitting a core group, and it's working. It's one-of-a-kind training in the state. We just had posts out there to evaluate our class, and they were very impressed by what we're doing.
Thank you very much. And again, when you look at mental health, again, a lot of the issues related to our homeless population, unfortunately, do deal with the mental health issues and the crisis as far as housing and where individuals get services. And so what gets done by them has been absolutely pivotal to our officers in making them have a comfort and an understanding for escalation, de-escalation, and how to have contact, how to work through some of the issues that are confronted by the homeless individuals. We did a training day where we pulled in all the HOPE teams throughout the city, and the big part of that was having them there and being able to, we actually set up encampments. We did it at ARTC. We set up encampments. We had different scenarios that would work the gamut from escalation to de-escalation, all the way from categorical use of force issues down to a mild use of force to no use of force at all, just communication and talking. And a lot of that experiences that they were able to pass on to us, again, I'm talking about the collaboration of not just one group or one entity, but just that entire part of it. With that, too, as we're looking into the mental health issue, if I could have a Department of Mental Health, if you could come up, please, and talk a little bit about. Again, I think it's important to realize this is a county entity that's coming in within the city. And again, when you talk about collaboration and relationships, this has been absolutely huge to us and how we have moved forward.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Miriam Brown with LA County Department of Mental Health. I'm the Acting Deputy Director for Emergency Services and oversee the SMART program.
Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning. And it's really been a pleasure working with LAPD. Initially, we only had about 16 teams to provide mental health services in collaboration with LAPD. As of January 2016, we expanded the teams to 32 teams in order to provide better services and have services from 6 in the morning until 2:30 in the morning. Since then, the services have duplicated in terms of as of today, we have provided 4,650 calls, meaning working with individuals who have mental health problems. And in addition to that, we have been able to track the homeless individuals that oftentimes we really don't know where are they really homeless. We just get a call and the SMART team it's called for. So of those 4,500 individuals that we have served over the past year, of those 1,500 were homeless individuals. In addition to that, we have worked closely with the HOPE team. With the HOPE team, which is a little bit different, it's more of a homeless outreach. We do have a similar program with the LA County Department of Mental Health, which is a mobile triage personnel, well known as the SB 82, and we have teams throughout the county. Part of that is we have clinicians and paraprofessionals that work closely with the HOPE team, not on a daily basis because there's so many individuals out there that need services, but the collaboration has been key in order to provide individuals with social services. We also work in collaboration because the key is collaboration, as Commander Chamberlain said earlier. If we work in collaboration with all these other agencies, we're better able and more equipped to provide more services to individuals. Each one of us has a role in these services. We provide mental health. Some individuals do the housing, others the law enforcement, others may be able to obtain vouchers. So together we have been able to provide better services, not only with the SMART team, but the HOPE team just alone providing outreach services, but always being able to call LAPD when needed. Additional, as mentioned earlier, the mental health intervention training that was first implemented by LAPD, it was replicated not specifically for the 40 hours, because the other police departments were not able to, they didn't have the capabilities. But through LAPD and working closely with LAPD, the district attorney and the chief of police from LA County, we were able to have a similar training, which is 16 hours, and expand our mental evaluation teams throughout the county. With that, LAPD was key in helping us to train the officers from the other departments, as they were able to accommodate them and have them through the 40 hours training. We have a variety of services. We have some of the clinics in that area, Downtown Mental Health, Hollywood Mental Health, and Northeast, that are part of the LAPD area. Similarly, we have mental health services in the Valley and the West LA. Again, I cannot thank enough to LAPD for the collaboration, and the other agencies like LASA and all the community-based organizations to be able to provide the mental health services that are needed in the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Another aspect of what we entered in this year and did is we took the CommStat model, and we've had a total of 3. I think we're actually on our 4th CommStat. And again, CommStat, I think you all have a history and an understanding of CommStat, but what's unique about this CommStat is that none of these people really work for us. And so that's the hard part, because when you get all these individuals from all these different entities, both city, county, and outside, to come together at one meeting, and then not only that, but to come back after their first CommStat, that's a huge accomplishment for this organization. Because again, the unique thing about it is, and like I said before, is that these organizations, they don't work for Todd Chamberlain, they don't work for LAPD. They're under the umbrella a lot of the times of the mayor, but they're all their own entity and they all have their own place. You know, they're not under really the direction of Chief Beck, unfortunately, but they all come together and they all work together, and to be able to have them come back. I was always worried about that in CommStat. At the end of every CommStat, I say, hey, please have the decision makers return, because again, I didn't want to end up seeing where it was an aide of an aide of an aide, and next thing we have a janitor sitting there who really doesn't have an experience or knowledge on it. He just got pulled into it. But every CommStat, the people that we've had relationships with, the people that we've collaborated with, they've returned to that table, and that we have had takeaways and we have had things that we have asked them to achieve and do, and they have done it, and that's been absolutely huge. If I could move real quickly into actually what we came to look at a little bit too was our HOPE team and our HOPE team configuration. Again, and I'm very candid about this across the board, a lot of this stuff is not perfect. There's still a lot of opportunities for growth. There's still a lot of opportunities to make things better. But when the chief directed us to make this happen, and he looked organizationally at what he wanted to achieve, we took the concept and we framed out what we could roll out right away. And what we could roll out right away was the HOPE team. And the HOPE team, again, it's morphed and changed over since the time it started, but the way it was originally framed and the way it was originally set up was, again, to be a collaborative effort. And the primary players in this were LASA, Housing Authority, and Los Angeles Surface Housing Authority, and then LA Sanitation, and then LAPD. We didn't get budgeted specifically for the bodies that came out, so unfortunately the bodies that came out to the HOPE team, there's 4 and 38, they came out of the resources of our operations. But again, the value of that is absolutely huge, because those officers that are doing that job, and you're going to see in a second when we turn the page here, have had a tremendous impact and a tremendous count. When we built this out, when we started framing this design and this idea, again, I was really anxious to get it going. Again, when you look at LAPD, the homeless population is at 26,000. A lot of people involved in the homeless endeavor, they talk about housing, housing, housing. This badge, our tools, our setup, what law enforcement does, we cannot get involved in the process of building houses for 26,000 or the infrastructure to support that. If you look at the size of some cities throughout Southern California, that's really the size of some cities, some medium-sized cities, is what we contend with here in the city of Los Angeles related to our homeless population. So what we wanted to do was roll something out that could start really actually touching people and start having an impact to both the homeless and the communities we serve. What I said was, when we started this and what we looked at was, again, I don't want to wait for a Cadillac and get that out there. I just wanted to get a Kia out the door and just get something that we could start actually having an impact. So with that came the concept of the HOPE team. The HOPE team, again, is a collaboration with LAPD, LASA, and LA SAN. I think it's important to look a little bit at what they have done since they first started. Since they have first started, it's been less than a year, and again, all these HOPE teams did not roll out simultaneously. They all came at about 2-month increments. Our last team that got built up was Operation South Bureau. Our first team was Operation Valley Bureau. Since those teams started, a big part of what we do in LAPD is measure if it's a success or if it's a failure. Because I honestly want to know that. If it's a bust, why waste our time on it? We'll scrap it and we'll go to some other idea. We'll start pulling some other levels. We'll start building out something else that we can frame to have an approach. So the big part of it was capturing the numbers and verifying if it's working. Since the inception, we've assisted over 390 people with housing or shelter. There's been over 48,000 hours that have been logged by LAPD. I think this is really an important aspect also. There's been 7,500 people that have been contacted by our HOPE teams who are involved in homelessness or the issues related to it. And there's been 1,150 cleanups with sanitation. And again, we are law enforcement, and there's going to be times when we enforce the laws and when there's individuals who's breaking the laws. It doesn't matter if you live in Brentwood, and it doesn't matter if you live in a tent. There's opportunities where people are going to break the law, and we want to make sure that ethically, constitutionally, and morally, if those issues happen, we are there to address that as well. But when you look at over 7,500 people that have been contacted by the HOPE teams, again, I don't think that this was based, and how this was framed was solely based on arresting only, but it was based on service. There's been only 101 felony arrests that have been made, and again, a lot of these are occurring within the encampments themselves. There's been 163 arrests. So you look at the disparity between arrest and contacts and services, I think it's a really good balance of what our officers are able to do with the support and the assistance of our partners in this. The HOPE team response teams, again, that's based on, when we first started, we just didn't have the LA SAN component there completely. So what we did is they have Operation Clean Streets, and so we looked at how we could mirror their calendar as opposed to stopping completely. And so we mirrored their calendar along with the council districts so that our HOPE team would go out with them. Since that time, they've been funded for additional resources, which now give our officers the opportunity to have a complete and full component of LA sanitation that's with us. What that allows us to do is the encampments that are ADA issues or American with Disability Act, we're able to respond out immediately and start addressing those issues. It also allows us to deal with bulky items, with the refuse, with the biological hazards, with all the issues that are related to the homeless that we did not have before. And Adele is going to talk about that in a little bit. He actually has a presentation, but he'll get more deep in the weeds and actually get into that. Also, when we looked at, again, accountability, are our officers achieving what we have set them out to do? Are we giving them what they need to succeed? If not, then if it's my fault or my mistake, what can we do to fix that and to change that? And so again, we wanted to make sure that each bureau has an accountable system, and so we looked at, again, across the board, everything that happens. We look at contacts, filled in interview cards, how many were placed for mental health issues, how many refused services. And again, I think that's just as important almost as how many did we contact, but how many refused it. And a lot of this information that we wanted to build up kind of reflected that. And so again, there was contacts. Well, this is what you have on the sheet and what's up on the board there. It's strictly for 17, for year-to-date 2017. So we've had 3,759 contacts. But also when you look at refusals for service, that's a number that's really important too, because just because you contact somebody doesn't mean they're immediately going to want something. A lot of it is based on the relationship that you build with those persons. And that's what these HOPE teams allow to do, is actually build relationships. Because the officer, again, the officer who's working 3A31 isn't going to have the time, the luxury, the knowledge, or the ability to really build a relationship with somebody. They would like to, but it's really difficult when you're bouncing from call to call to call. So what the HOPE team allows is those contacts to happen. But even with those contacts of 3,759, there was refusal of services on 1,755. That's about 65 to 70% of the number of contacts who refuse to take any services on that. Another thing that we track is also the citations, hotel housing, shelter, cleanups, return to the families, and then other services that were provided. And again, Peter Lynn, he's going to talk briefly, or he's going to come up and talk soon about what LASA does. But what they do is absolutely huge because, again, our officers do not have the subject matter expertise to make sure that they are getting all the right systems in place to have a person who is involved in homelessness have the opportunity to get out of that homelessness. So really what LASA does, and they're going to expound on a little bit more, they're basically the hub. They are the subject matter experts that allow our officers to go to them to get these spokes that reach out to all these different groups and different entities that can provide these services. Our HOPE teams, when you look at a success, again, if you went south on the 110 before our HOPE teams went up, almost every overpass was completely filled up with encampments and tents. So it was important not just to move people along, but to do it effectively and do it constitutionally. That actually occurred with the support of what happened down in South Bureau. Myra is our sergeant down there. She has done an absolutely incredible job in a short time. And if you drive down there now, you have a completely different environment, not only for the community, but also for the individuals that were homeless. Our homeless CommStat, we talked about that real quickly and how it's framed up. But I also think it's important, again, when you get to our numbers of what that is also. Besides the idea of the relationship, it's also the idea of making sure we have a clear understanding of what crimes are related to our homeless population, whether they are being victimized or whether they are involved in the homeless act or involved in the criminal activity. And so we started doing a track on all our Part 1 crimes. Again, our Part 1 involves homicide, rapes, robberies, aggravated assaults, burglaries, motor theft from vehicles, burglary theft, and larceny. When you look at that, for 2015, our individuals that were the victims were 1,273. Suspects involved in crimes in 15 were 1,730. For 2016, we had an uptick. It was almost a 45%. I think a lot of that is going to be based on the fact that we changed our MO coding and we started actually capturing real information. So as that data becomes more solidified over probably about 2 to 3 years, I think you're going to start to see a lot more true reflection of what type of criminal activity, whether they're victims or whether they're involved in criminal activity, that we'll be able to measure, because I think at the beginning the data was bad. But as this information starts getting compounded over 2 or 3 years, we're going to have a pretty good pool to start really seeing what kind of crime activity is going on. So again, there was about a 45% increase we noticed in 2016, where we had 2,507 crimes that were actually related to individuals who are homeless also being suspects in crime. But then also we had 1,400 individuals that were homeless who were also victims of crime, which again is something that we wanted to ensure we tracked. For 2017 year to date, we've had 684 Part 1 crimes related to our homeless population, and we've had 321 individuals that have been victimized who are also homeless. Our use of forces, besides just capturing the crime, besides capturing the contacts, besides capturing what we have been able to achieve as far as referrals or placements, we also wanted to have a clear and concise look at where we are as far as our use of forces and make sure that it's in line with the expectations of our officers and the department's goals and the chief's goals. When you look citywide, for 2016-17, there was 1,691 use of forces. In Reset, which we talked briefly about, which is the Skid Row, which is probably the epicenter or the most intense location for homeless issues, they had 70 use of forces. Our HOPE teams, which again have made over 7,500 contacts since their inception, we have had 1 use of force. So again, when you look at the contacts compared to the use of forces, we're basically at about a 0.5 use of force for every 100 arrests, which is far below department standards. And again, I think a lot of that is it's kudos to all the individuals that are involved. It's the officers who make that happen. But I also think it's a lot based on the training that they have gotten and the escalation and de-escalation of force when dealing with this complex and incredibly unique population that they're contending with. So that's something, again, that we're always going to continue to strive and to monitor and make sure. The Jail In-Reach program is something that also got started this year. It was imperative, too. When you looked at it, it goes within lines with the mayor's directions as far as the in-reach, and it also goes within Chief Beck's desire to make sure that if we can have as much contact with individuals at different times when they're in crisis, so we can get them on a different path. And if I could have the captain, if you could step up, please. This program, again, it's one of those things where you task somebody and they make it happen, and this definitely happened, and I'm going to let him talk about his program.
Hi, good morning. Captain Newton, Custody Services Division. Expansion of jail in-reach is part of Strategy 3D, which is No Wrong Door, and it really seeks to expand jail in-reach to those who are experiencing homelessness in both the city jail system as well as the county jail. we do have a captive audience. So working with Council District 1, we have identified 3 service providers to provide in-reach services at our 3 large regional jails, Metropolitan Detention Center, Valley Jail, and 77th Regional Jail. Homeless Healthcare Los Angeles is currently servicing the Metropolitan Detention Center. We've been up and running for 10 weeks at MDC and Valley Jail. Tarzana Treatment Center is servicing Valley Jail, and 77th Regional Jail is yet to come online, but we hope to have them online within a month. Partnering with these groups, we identify the homeless population within the jail in cooperation with Medical Services Division and our intake staff. In the last 10 weeks, we've made 188 contacts with homeless individuals. 98 of those individuals consented for service, and we've provided, or the in-reach servicing providers have provided similar services to those provided on the street, which would be shelter referrals, hotel referrals, coordinated entry system entry, and appointments to complete the coordinated entry system so they can receive the full gamut of services within our jails. In addition, we've created a community resource guide that we're placing in every arrestee's property bag that does elaborate on the services available once they do step out the door, either from our jail facility, from the county jail, or from a state prison. Right now, our program is in its infancy. We're operating from noon to 5 on Fridays. So that 188 number is just providing 5 hours of service per week at our 2 jail facilities, and we fully intend on expanding those days and hours in the future. And that's all I have, unless you have questions.
That's awesome. I think the incredible part about this, and what's really good, is that, again, when someone comes into the jail facility, we don't have them for a long time. It's not as if we're, a county facility or a state facility. So we have a very brief window to have an opportunity to make contact. And that's really what he's been able to do. Because with his connections, with the services that he has been able to seek out and reach out to, and the cooperation of other entities, we're actually able to identify the homeless population within our jails, which again is not for a very long time, and actually sit down with them and talk with them and try to give them other opportunities and other locations that they can go to other than stepping out those jail doors and walking 3 blocks and reading back down on Skid Row. And that's been an absolutely huge component. And so again, whether everybody takes it, I don't know. I don't think a lot of them do. But the fact that it's there, the fact that it's offered, the fact that we can continue to hone on this and hopefully make this program better so that more people will make decisions to get out of that rut. Because again, for us, it's almost a cycle too. I mean, we do find ourselves arresting the same people over and over, and it's not beneficial to us, it's not beneficial to them, and it's not beneficial to the community that we serve. And so that's where we hope that there is some type of opportunities with this, and I really appreciate what he's done with that. So thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah.
Based on all the programs that we have, based on what philanthropy is doing for homeless, based on the coordinations that you're describing today, are other cities shipping their homeless to Los Angeles?
Well, I don't have any specifics, and I don't want to give just anecdotal information. I really don't. I mean, I've heard things like Manchester Square where other entities were saying, hey, go there, it's like an opportunity, it's a free zone or whatever. So again, I don't want to give you bad information, I don't want to give you unfactual information, so I really don't know.
Bus tickets to Los Angeles from other cities as their way to deal with homeless is what
again, if I gave you anything, it wouldn't be factual, it would just be based on what I'm hearing, and I don't want to give out bad information.
Thank you, Todd.
Just to comment on your question, one of the things that is causational to the issues in Skid Row is the concentration of services. So we do get a lot of folks that are brought in because of the services, and it isn't it isn't so much a dumping situation as this is the only place that you can, if you're a deputy sheriff and you want to take somebody to an alcohol intake place and not put them in your jail, really the only place to go is in Skid Row on 6th Street. So, you know, this is part of the burden of being the big city, is that we have services that other people don't have.
With that in mind, I think that's important too, to get an idea of what's changed in the city too, and for everybody, because like what the chief said, Skid Row has always been kind of the epicenter for the homeless, and the reason because of that, a lot of it was based on the fact that all those services are there, the missions are there, the service, they can get clothes, medical care, you know, rehabilitation, intervention, prevention, all those things are there. But what's changed over the last 3 to 4 years, I think, is that, again, the density of the Skid Row area, what's going on there, the encampments, now you're starting to see it in every 21 of the commands throughout the city of Los Angeles, where before you wouldn't see it. But now I don't think that there's a command, I don't think that there's a council district that is not one of their primary issues or one of the primary things that they have to confront and face, is dealing with the homeless population. And what's unique about it is that the anchor points that might hold an encampment out in San Pedro or out in Mission area or Foothill or Southwest is very different than what is holding them on Skid Row, because the anchor point in another division might not be a service venue, but it might be a recycling center. It might be a store that sells single service. It might be a location where you know, there's Tahunga Wash, or there's Sepulveda Basin, or there's Manchester, where there's someplace there where they feel that they can go and set up these huge encampments, and so without the services. So that's really what, again, a lot of the things that we built out were based not solely just getting myopic or focused only on Skid Row, because that's an important aspect, but now we are citywide confronted with huge issues that are very similar to what's going on Skid Row, and the communities and the neighborhoods that are being impacted by this have never been impacted before. And that's where I say we're in the middle, because you know, I look, there was a street in Wingo, it was out in San Fernando Valley, and it used to be a causeway where children would go back and forth to school, and now it's a homeless encampment that goes for about 1/4 of a mile. And you talk to the community members there, and again, you know, I talked to one woman, and she said that her child couldn't stay up to eat his breakfast in the morning because the noise from the encampments, the issues from the encampments was so intense. And so that's what we really had to frame out. All of the things that we did was based upon how do we best serve the homeless, but then also how do we serve these communities that are not aware of the services that are in Skid Row, that have never had to confront these services, had to confront these issues. How do we balance that out? And so that really is something that we had to contend with.
The new regulations, restrictions on things that we could do to otherwise implement humane enforcement have made it more difficult?
No, and that's what, you know, when we found out, and you look on your package, there's a thing, we talked about our enforcement principles. We wanted to make sure we had that to go in line with the new laws, 5611, 8502. And what we wanted to make sure that we did is we looked at crime, we looked at community complaints, and we looked at council concerns. We didn't want to just hit homeless encampments based upon the fact that it was a homeless encampment. We wanted to have a correlation to crime, to complaints, what we're getting from our council districts, all of it, all inclusive, so that all the levers are going to be pulled at the same time, and they're all going to impact what happens. And so that's how when the HOPE teams go into a certain location, and we're looking at the crime, we're seeing, okay, we see a correlation to the crime related to the community complaints as well as what the council district says. And when you talk about, you know, 5611, 8502, again, those are two new things that were instituted, LAMC sections. 8502 relates specifically to vehicles being parked in residential used as dwellings, and 5611 relates to bulky items, which is primarily an LA SAN thing where LAPD will enforce 2 of them. We've done about a year of education. We didn't want to take 5611 and just start doing enforcement. We wanted to do education, and so there's actually been a flyer that's been sent out for almost 6 to 7 months. After 5611, again, you talk about a threat or an issue related to LAPD's work with the homeless population, lawsuits and injunctions is definitely something that we have to contend with. If you go back to Jones, which is in 2006, Levon, which was in 2012, Mitchell, which came 3 days after the implementation of 5611, those are issues that, again, really hamper or constrict what law enforcement is able to do and how we are able to impact the issues that are going on. So for us, we wanted to make sure that our implementation of 5611 was done properly, ethically, and constitutionally. And when you look at how we've implemented it, again, although it was an option for enforcement for actual physical arrest, we have spent a lot of time doing education. We have spent a lot of time doing citations. We have written over 388 citations, and there's been very few arrests with that. Obviously, again, I talked about what we are. We are law enforcement. If it gets to the point where enforcement has to become a part, we want to make sure, again, our officers are trained and able to effectively do that with the least amount of issues involved. But also, if you look back to, with the many things that happen in the city of Los Angeles, a lot of our, the issues that we contend with, some of them are actually self-inflicted. I look at 4118D, which was implemented to allow tents to actually go up on the sidewalks, and they were allowed to go up between 9 o'clock at night and 6 in the morning. That in turn caused the issues related to Levon and Jones, which again brought about 5611, which in turn brought in the Mitchell injunction. So it's really a unique and a really complex spot for our officers to be in, because even with 8502, as we move into what we might consider safe parking as the council districts move for that, we'll see how that works, where an individual can pull into a lot. But again, ultimately it's going to fall on the shoulders of LAPD to manage and enforce and police those issues that might go with some of these things and these new ideas and these new concepts. So we're always striving to do our best with that and make sure that it's done properly. Lastly, real quick, I just want to go into the last thing that we're talking about, and you're going to see in your packet the number of flyers. We also wanted to focus not just on anchor points of what's keeping encampments and locations, but we also wanted to focus again on the individuals that are chronics as regards the homeless population. And when I mean chronics, I don't mean just an individual who's homeless, but I mean an individual who might be victimizing those individuals within those encampments. And that's something that we do see a lot of. I mentioned our Part 1 crime numbers. You can only imagine how many of those crimes might not even get reported. And when you see a large encampment or you see Skid Row, the concept or the idea of saying, oh, you know what, let's just kind of block it off and let them self-police and we'll just kind of keep out of it just so they don't cause anybody any issues, that's failed thinking. That's a flawed philosophy, and it can't be, maintained. And especially when you look at those individuals in these areas, whether it's Skid Row or whether it's an encampment in any of the other 21 different commands, there's a lot of crime that occurs in there. There's a lot of bad things. There's a lot of violent people. And that, again, is something that we have to make sure that we're addressing, because we don't serve just the rich. We serve the poor, the poorest of the poor. And just as wealth is not an excuse for breaking the law, poverty is also not an excuse for breaking the law. And so we really have to balance that out and make sure that we do it effectively and properly. So again, one thing we wanted to do is find out the most violent individuals in certain encampments or in certain areas, and we broke that down by bureaus. And then we also looked at our users that are using the most services, whether it's public service, whether it's LAFD, whether it's LAPD. And then we actually wanted to make contact with them when they're not in crisis, when they're not having issues. And this is something that we've been able to do in a lot of different locations on different crimes, such as domestic violence, where we actually identify an individual who is involved in multiple instances of domestic violence. And to be able to go up and deliver a letter to that person or have a conversation with that person when they're not high, when they're not angry, when they're not involved in a conflict, but say, hey, listen, we're aware of the issues related to what's going on in this location, this venue, and we'd like you to stop, and we have services that can be provided to you. That's something that we wanted to try with our chronic offender letter as well. And so again, we took the same concept, the same idea. We identified the chronic individuals related to some of the homeless population. And again, these are violent individuals and also high users that don't just impact the community. So I don't want to get that idea where it's just, oh, we're worried about the community on the outside. These are the individuals in these encampments that also victimize the people within the encampments as well. And so we wanted to identify them, make sure that they're aware, we are aware of their activity, but then again, the same token, we want to make sure that they have an idea and a choice for locations and outreach and things if they want to get out of the rut that they're in. And so that's a chronic offender letter model that we've just started, and we're trying to get that going. Before I pull up my other partners that I want to have talk to you real quick and give you an idea, I just wanted to talk about our strengths. Our strengths, obviously, is we made something happen. A year ago, a lot of this stuff wasn't in place based upon the foresight of the chief, based upon the support of the mayor's office. We have been able to pull resources, to pull partnerships, and to get a lot of entities involved in this endeavor. The policy itself, it wouldn't have happened without the support of Mr. Johnson Ms. Figueroa, it would not have happened without your support, without your guidance, without your direction. And so that was a huge thing, that we're all into this together, and we're all trying our best to work on a problem, not as an individual, but as a group and as an entity, and it's been huge, so thank you for that. Our weaknesses, without question, I think, is our homeless population, and I think it is growing. You know, I get the chance to talk to not just people within the county, but people throughout the country. And I have had a lot of people who have actually come into LAPD to look at what we have been doing with the HOPE team and what we have built out as an organization. I've had Phoenix, I've had Las Vegas. I've gotten the opportunity to go back to Harvard and talk to a Human Services Committee about it, and entities from throughout the country had no idea of what we were doing, but they're trying to model something similar on this. And so that is without question of strength, but it's also a weakness. The legal issues that we constantly get involved with that is an inhibitor. It causes a lot of issue. And I think it impacts not only the department, but in a way it impacts the people that are truly homeless, who are in truly of need of services. A lot of these legality issues, a lot of these injunctions, again, it causes huge issue, because you're dealing with mental health issues, you're dealing with narcotics, substance abuse issues, and I don't think it's fair to think that anybody would want to live in a tent, and especially live in a tent that's filled with feces, filled with rats. And when some of the resources are limited to law enforcement, limited to our city partners to address those issues, I don't think that's serving the people who live in those tents fairly or properly. I think it's an impediment to their well-being. I think it's an impediment to law enforcement, and I think it's an impediment to community safety, and I also sincerely think it's an impediment to those individuals that are homeless. Because I know that if my daughters had to live in a tent, if my daughters had to be involved in that situation, again, what goes on in those encampments that are allowed to fester, the issues that we see, if they're not addressed, if they're not modified, if they're not cleaned, it's really a bad situation. Some of our threats as well is we talked about the population, the better coordination within city entities. We have a huge relationship with Department of Mental Health in the county. I've been able to meet with the doctors involved at a county level. We've also had the Sheriff's Department come to our Comm stats and start working in that. I think that that's important because, again, when we look at a population of about roughly 26,000 in the city of Los Angeles, and Peter Lynn will talk a little bit more about it, but the population at a county level is about 40. Again, this is something that can't be handled strictly by LAPD. It's going to have to be something that's collaborative within all law enforcement entities. And like what you talked about, Mr. Soboroff, in regards to bodies moving from one location to another, that's really what we found in LAPD, and that's what the chief said he didn't want to have happen, where we just did that move along thing. Because when you're dealing with encampments, when you're dealing with these individuals, the thing that makes it so complex is that you're not dealing with boxes. We're not moving boxes, we're moving human beings. And that's a really difficult thing to do. And when you squeeze a balloon, if you move one encampment somewhere, it's just going to go somewhere else. And so, again, that's really why we're trying to have a solution, a long-term solution, and something sustainable. Our opportunities, again, I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can see where we're at as far as things. And the one thing I want to throw out, too, and my partner is working on it, Monique Contreras is working on it incredibly hard, is that sometimes with the homeless community, is some of the big little things, or the little big things that you would never even imagine that have the biggest impact on whether they stay in the streets or whether they get out of it. And one of those things is their animals. There's been a number of contacts that have been done by the HOPE officers where someone has decided to stay on the streets based upon their animals. And by able to work with animal regulation or animal regs and get them involved in it, where their animals can be taken into a location where they know that their animal is safe, and they'll go out and seek services on that. That's one of those things that, again, I would never even thought about. I wouldn't even have that idea about it until you talk to somebody, until you get that information, that feedback. So not only is the collaboration important in those relationships with the entities that support and work on the homeless, but also that collaboration relationship with the actual individuals that are homeless to find out what their needs are, to find out what we can do better to support them and to serve them is really important. With that, too, I'd like to call up Peter Lynn. I don't know if Peter's here. The relationship, again, with LASA has been absolutely huge, where we might not have even had a conversation a year and a half ago or a year ago. We now have a true partnership, and it's
we were always talking. Yep. Good morning. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, and I also appreciate your willingness to address this topic. I think that this is probably a unique commission meeting for you guys to be sitting down and grappling with homelessness. It's been obviously on something that LAPD has had to deal with and with law enforcement across the county, but I think that the willingness to deal with it on an open and collaborative basis is really gives us a unique opportunity. LASA is a joint powers authority. We're not a city agency. We are combined between the city and the county. Our commission is half city appointed, half county appointed. So I kind of sit in both worlds, and the nature of the complexity of this issue, the fact that homelessness has such a multifaceted set of causes, it has such a multifaceted set of solutions that need to be applied, requires us to be very collaborative in our operations. We generally contract with community-based providers to do the work that we do. So the vast majority of what's accomplished through the resources that we administer and that we apply are done by community-based partners, for homeless healthcare, for example, but dozens of other partners around the community. We do, though, have one programmatic element, which is our outreach, and that is what we do with LAPD and through the HOPE teams. Our emergency response teams are out deployed. We have 8 of them deployed with HOPE teams. It is a very, very effective collaborative partnership. I think that it has evolved fairly dramatically since launching in the Valley last May. And, the nature of the relationship can be challenging, I think, for both sides. I think we are very, very different organizations. We have very, very different organizational cultures and sort of interactions with folks. But I think that there has been a tremendous strength in the work that we've done together and the learning that has been involved on both sides, and the willingness to engage and the willingness to treat the folks that we're encountering on the street with real humanity, I think is a really powerful, one of the most powerful developments. Our metrics, when we look at numbers, the first 6 months of the year, we exceeded the annual goal for encounters through this program. So we were at 115% of what we were expecting to do in terms of encounters. And the first quarter of 2017, we're actually exceeding that number as well. So the number of encounters, the quality of those, and I think that some of the metrics, when you look at the sort of placements into detox, or you place people into permanent housing, they look relatively small with regard to, when you compare that to the number of people that you're encountering. The detox is a pretty intense experience for folks to be willing to go into, and the fact that you can generate the kind of trust that will engage people to willingness to go and take that step, I think that speaks volumes to the relationships that have been built. Like I said, it has not been perfectly seamless. I think that there was a lot of learning on both sides. We have had experiences where we have to hammer through issues, and I think that one of the things that is a strength of the partnership is that we have monthly meetings of the management to really drill down and address those issues. On management on our side, management on the PD side, and we work through all those issues. I think that the willingness to address different aspects of the way that we encounter folks is another real strength. Allowing the outreach staff to go first, and my staff, a lot of folks with lived experience. We have a lot of people who are ex-offenders on our outreach staff. We have it's a very, very different culture. Folks, our staff, we'll have staff with the neck tattoos, and it's just there's a very different feel to the way that they're approaching folks. The fact that they can work together and that they're working very effectively, I think, is a testament to that. We have a long-standing relationship with sanitation. We have done outreach and engagement with folks in advance of cleanups from the city for a long period of time. That is part of the encampment protocol that's long-standing in the city of LA. Our relationship with LAPD has been much more informal and ad hoc, and sort of individual relationships between individual senior leads and so forth. And I think that the establishment of the HOPE teams and the training that's being promulgated out through the department speaks volumes to the sort of stepping up and standardizing and really, sort of professionalizing the relationship in terms of addressing homelessness. Homelessness, I don't have to tell you, is at a crisis level in Los Angeles. We have more than 47,000 people on our streets and in our shelters. We have the largest unsheltered population in America. That it's by far standout largest unsheltered population. 75% of the people who are homeless in Los Angeles are on our streets. We've seen a dramatic. One of the responsibilities that LAHSA has is the annual homeless count. We fan out across the county and we count census tract by census tract how many people are on our streets. We have seen a dramatic increase, more than doubling of the number of encampments, people living in tents, people living in vehicles. So the visual presentation of folks on the street is very, very different when they're encamped. They have makeshift shelter, blue tarp. It's a very different, very much larger visible presence than folks who were in bedrolls. And I think that is one of the things that the street population has not increased nearly as much as the encampment numbers have increased. So that's one of the things that I think impacts people's perception of how serious the problem is. But the numbers have gone up. I heard a couple of questions about, inflow into homelessness. The vast majority of the folks here are local. This is a local problem. Folks don't come here to be homeless. We find that more than 90% of the folks have been here for more than a year, and that two-thirds or more than three-quarters are more than 10 years in Los Angeles County. They're actually more Angelino than folks in housing in terms of like their long-term residents. We do have folks who come here and become homeless, but that's a sort of, not making it, coming here and trying to make it. Coming here from a state of homelessness to a state of homelessness is relatively rare. That within the county, obviously, there are areas like Skid Row that have a specific draw to them, and the connection to the location for discharge points from the jails, I think, is an obvious one. But there are, the causes for homelessness is largely driven by the unaffordability of housing in Los Angeles and the need to get better mental health and substance abuse treatment services to folks. I think the intersection of health issues and the stark unaffordability of housing in Los Angeles are the key drivers. It's not an imported challenge. Yes, ma'am.
Do we have an ethnic breakdown of homelessness?
We do. So we, as part of the demographics that we...
Can you speak up a little closer to the mic?
I can. Okay, is that better? One of the interesting challenges, so we do demographic surveys as part of the homeless count. There is a pretty dramatic disproportion of African Americans in states of homelessness as compared to the general population. It's about 40% of the folks experiencing 40. So that's as in contrast to 9% of the county population. So there is a stark disproportion of folks experiencing homelessness who are African American. So we are in connection to the work that's going on, collaborating with LAPD. We are working with the Sheriff's Department. We are also working with numerous other agencies to build out a much more integrated and connected system to address homelessness. We had been in the practice of funding individual standalone programs with very little connectivity between our shelter infrastructure and our housing infrastructure. There was, very little that connected outreach through to housing placements, and those are all things that we're building out right now, and we've been intentionally funding the connectivity between those organizations. We're working very closely with partners in the nonprofit sector, in leadership in that space, and also working very closely with the implementation of the homeless initiative strategies on the county side and the city side. I did not prepare slides, unlike my colleague here, so I will. Yes, I didn't understand the protocol. Next time I will have a very deep deck for you guys to go through. Are there any?
There we go. First, thank you for being here. This has been both informative and well-timed presentation. I have a couple of questions, though, about scale and where we go from here. We are, as you've laid it out, pretty much in the nascent space as it relates to building on our response to homelessness. It sounds like we've got a lot of incredibly promising collaborations, lots of programs and training that's going on. But as it relates, so I'm sort of interested in, from your perspective, what right-sized or what scale of intervention do we need in order to have the kind of impact that we're seeking to have from the department's perspective? And also, for both of you, where you see this going?
I'll talk specifically about, I guess, what we could do. I guess, obviously when we built out what the HOPE teams were and how we wanted to do it, again, we looked at what we could build as best practices and what would be long-term. But obviously, it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, and we wish it could get, based on our population, based upon what they have to do, it would be nice to have additional resources. But we also understand, and we know that, again, that might not be achievable. A lot of that is based on the issues that are going on with deployment department-wide, resources that are needed at other locations, other venues. I mean, there's other things that are just as pertinent as what we are contending with. And so just the mere fact that we were able to pull in 38 officers and 4 supervisors out of operations has been absolutely huge. And again, I also think that it's important to know that those 4 and 38 have been able to do a yeoman's work with what they have. Obviously, long-term, I think it would be nice to see it. Again, this was a non-budgeted item. So those officers were not counted in or counted into this 16-17. And Chief, feel free to jump in when you feel. But hopefully long-term is if this is something that we do see that's going to be effective, that we get this items budgeted and these officers are TO'd specifically for these spots. Because right now, they're pulled in out of operations.
From LASA's perspective, the first team that was in the Valley, we pulled that team from, our force that was already deployed, but we got city funding mid-year for the other teams to expand out. It's not clear to us whether that is going to be continued in 17-18, so we're still in discussion with the city about that funding.
And do we have any idea how the passage of the county's recent measure might impact the kinds of work or the kinds of funding for the kinds of work that we're doing, and to what extent do we have a role or have we been invited to participate in the thinking and the planning around how some of those funds might be used?
You anticipated my next statement, which is that Measure H passage really does change the game for the county and the city of Los Angeles. I think that one of the things, so there is a planning process underway right now. Actually, the first meeting to actually grapple with recommended budgets for strategies is on Thursday of this week. Following week will be some that are directly connected to what we're talking about here, which is community-based outreach and coordinated outreach. The funding that will come through those, I think, will represent a dramatic increase in what resources are available. The way that they're deployed, I think, is going to be the interesting challenge. We have requested funding to continue to coordinate with LASA outreach and local law enforcement, but obviously that's from the county's perspective, so local law enforcement is countywide, including obviously LAPD. But that will dramatically increase the resources that are going out. LASA is engaged in the process. The city is represented by the CAO's office and HCID at the table there.
And for us in law enforcement, again, the way the HOPE teams were constructed, and the reason I think that they do work so well, is because, again, it doesn't all fall onto the officers to be the subject matter experts about where all the resources are, what's needed, what's not needed. I think had we put that on them, I think it would have been way too much. And so that is going to be the success of HOPE, is keeping the collaboration and making sure that the subject matter experts, which is them, have resources available, have opportunities to get people that law enforcement comes in contact with passed to them, and then they can take it in another direction. That's really where I see those benefits coming. For us, our mission is going to stay pretty consistent, because again, our goal is not to become the subject matter expert on where all these individuals are, where all these services are, but where are the right people that they can have contact with to get in the right direction, in the right place.
No, thank you, and I appreciate that answer. It just seems to me, and I'm sure that you recognize it, that we have a pretty significant stake
Yes.
in how well and strategic their planning process is as it relates to and overlaps with what we are seeking to achieve. And so I'm simply hopeful that we have sufficient insight and voice at that table to make sure that the collaboration meets everybody's needs and the outcomes, reflect the collective wisdom that's being developed through this work.
Law enforcement is represented at that table by the Sheriff's Department, so their lead on it is an active participant.
I've also had discussions with the CAO, who's our representative, and he knows what I've told everybody, and that is that whatever LASA puts up for the HOPE teams and whatever Department of Mental Health puts up for the SMART teams, we will match. Because I believe in this program. I believe in the collaborative programs, and right now the problem is bottomless. So, we haven't reached a stage where we are anywhere near resourced.
Thank you, Chief Beck.
10-second question. Three 10-second questions. The first one, just clarification. Tell me if I'm wrong. It's 47,000 in the county. It's 25,000 in the city. 29,000 in the city, and 4,000 automobiles, 4,000 people living in their cars? Or is that included in their number?
That is included in that. It's actually a larger number of people living in their cars than that.
Okay.
But so the majority of folks who are on the street are actually in some kind of makeshift dwelling or a vehicle.
Okay. Second, half just say no. It sounds like. You were saying that half the people don't want any help. They're not willing to accept help. And the reason that... Wait a second. I'm asking...
Yeah.
You said... you asked us... You took a survey, and so people said... and they can't just say they don't want help. They need different kinds of help? Or you're saying they're refusing service? What are the numbers?
I think it's really important to recognize that the folks who we're encountering have had a lot of experience with previous encounters and with systematic resources that are really insufficient. They have had a lot of disconnected, disparate services. They have had a lot of shelter. Our shelter infrastructure until this year was overnight, 14-hour, first come, first serve. So you had to queue up every night. You could have a very small amount of personal possessions, and at 6 a.m. you had to get back on the bus and get out of there. Okay. If you showed up with anything more than that, you show up with your pet or your animal, it's very hard. I think that when we look at the folks saying, "Leave me alone," or "I don't want anything," I don't need you right now. I think it's really important to look at the context of the history of the resource offering that we have made. I think that what we are encountering is people essentially calling our bluff. We have the thing is, when you ask somebody, can he help you? If I'm not offering you an authentic value proposition that I can help you, you're likely to just say no, right? If I don't back my stuff up with real services, then the value proposition I'm offering is false, and they're right to call us on.
So the question that comes to this is of those...
Make it quick, because I do want to realize we have four more presentations with a lot of public comment. I want to make sure everybody has a opportunity to ask.
The people that do say no, and Todd said that they did a survey, what can we do better? The question is, what can we do better? If somebody has severe mental illness or is severely in a drug state, they're going to probably say no more than somebody else will.
Right.
What can we do better to help the people say yes?
I think that we're doing it. I think the key thing for us to do is to enrich the service proposition that we have and to really offer something that's authentic. When we have real beds in real shelters that are 24-hour, that allow them to bring their animal, that allow them to be connected with their significant other, and that allow them some amount of possessions, that I think is, and then there's a real housing placement at the other end, that's something that's actually quite valuable. And once we can demonstrate the authenticity of that, we are going to get a lot more traction.
Thank you, sir.
And that was a big part. Thank you, Peter, very much. Thanks for everything. Again, I think that what he expressed is really huge because, again, that relationship, no, we're good. We're good. But that relationship and that contact where we have our officers going out with individuals who are one-time homeless, who have criminal histories or have issues, that's groundbreaking. I look back at Operation Ceasefire where you're actually pulling in gang members who have a high propensity of being killed or killing somebody and having another gang member who's got out of it, or a mother who's been a victim of gunfire talking to them about the carnage that's related to those decisions. Those are the life decisions that, again, a lot of our officers can't convey, but they can convey it. And that partnership has been absolutely huge and pivotal. And also the thing that I think is important, too, is when we frame this out, I had the opportunity to talk to a lot of different groups that were involved in homeless outreach, and really it got down to a small pool where we actually had the tangible approach, where they could get housing, where they could get services, where they could get treatments, because a lot of those organizations that do things that are really positive, and I would never in any way cast shadows on them, they're not really what we as a law enforcement organization wanted to get connected to. There's a lot of organizations that feed, or there's a lot of organizations that provide clothing or things like that. But that really wasn't the tangible stuff that we in law enforcement needed to make sure that a subject matter expert could actually provide a service to these individuals. So that's where the relationship has been absolutely huge and pivotal.
Great, thank you. I want just a couple more. We have time for a couple more questions. Did either of you have any questions?
We can move on.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. I think we have the city is next.
Well, what we have now is going to have Call Up LA Sand. Another big part of what we have to contend with, besides the individuals, is the property, the belongings, the biohazards, the waste, the filth that goes with some of these larger encampments. And trying to go through that is as complex as trying to deal with the placement. Again, when we talked about compassion compassion for the homeless and compassion for the communities and the businesses that live and reside and work in LA, that is the balance where Los Angeles Sanitation comes into play. Again, they have a subject matter expertise that goes far beyond what our officers should or should even be close to having. And those resources have been able to have a huge impact in the encampments and really bringing it down to a more manageable side. And with that, sir.
Well, thank you, Commander. I'm Enrique Zaldivar, Director and General Manager of LA Sanitation. Welcome, Commissioners. Chief Beck. LA Stan is a member agency of the Board of Public Works Commission, your colleague commission, and normally I would be at a different place addressing the days here, but it's an honor to have you. We are proud members of the team that Commander Chamberlain has assembled. I have to truly commend him for what he, on his own initiative, has brought a collage of what might have been a disparate team before, with the number of offices within the city family and outside of the city family, as you heard before. It was the early engagement that we had with the LAPD in this endeavor began, as Todd mentioned, with the operation with our Clean Streets program, and it was through that we realized that a different approach needed to be brought to bear, and in between we collectively with LAPD and the leadership of the mayor and the council developed the 5611 protocols, which for us is a new area. Yes, we're in the business of environmental health, environmental protection, I should say, and public health protection. However, this particular area is really new to us. We have only been engaged in the homeless encampment cleanup efforts for the last 2.5 years or so. And it was through the 5611 development of the protocols that we realized that the approach needed to be far more comprehensive, much broader. We, I will admit, have grown in expertise in LA San. We have grown in understanding, And frankly, we have grown in compassion. And you're going to see a PowerPoint presentation that has metrics and it has sort of our nomenclature on how we approach this in collaboration with LAPD and LASA. But we are never going to lose sight of the fact that the ultimate and primary goal here is of the entire homelessness strategy is placement and turning around lives. So our metrics lie somewhere below that. We want to continue to be complementary and of assistance to LASA and LAPD and to the entire city family. I'm going to call my Assistant General Manager Adele Hash-Khalil. I want to thank my two of my folks who have been very involved with LAPD in developing our strategy, and that is Officer Gonzalo, who's going to be commanding the PowerPoint, and then Officer Steve Peterson. Thank you.
Thank you, Enrique. Good morning, Adele Hash-Khalil. I'm the Assistant General Manager for Sanitation, and thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for this collaboration. I always talk about, whether I talk about water challenges or talk about homelessness, talk about cleaning the city, I always talk about the solution is 3 I's, the integration, innovation, and inclusion. We can't get stuff done, and this is what you see here, the evolution of working together, integrating our resources, leveraging our resources, innovation, moving from Operation Healthy Streets and Skid Row to Clean Streets LA, but now the HOPE teams is the example of an innovative ways of how we come together to address the issue. And inclusion, I mean, we have to include everybody, and it's not just us as a city agencies, county agencies, it's the community, the public, everyone. What we're doing here is for the public, and one thing I always was thinking is, what we share is and I think this is the goal of the mayor and the director of the mayor and council, is to go back to basic services. They can't get any basic than cleaning the city and providing services for the homeless. It's just the basic stuff. And one thing that we all have in common is with the environmental agency, we are charged with keeping the city clean and safe, but also I think critical is a clean city is a safe city. We all remember this is important, is as we clean the city becomes safe, prosper, and everybody becomes better. And this is really what we're seeing it here. And as an agency, sanitation is the environmental agency for the city. We're proud of what we do every day, protecting the public health and the environment. And the relationship to the homeless initiative, our encounter started, next slide, Gonzalo. Our encounter started in 2012. We did not do work in the public right-of-way. We only picked up trash. We cleaned stormwater, cleaned recycled water. We did a lot of that work. But in 2012, there was a huge issue. Skid Row became a huge issue. We had the county public health was there, and they declared a health emergency. And we basically stepped in and said, we need to do something. This is critical to our mission as an environmentalist, keeping the city clean. So we stepped in and developed our first program, which is Operation Healthy Streets. But council, and I can't say more about the importance of council and the mayor in terms of helping us get the resources to move us forward. But 5611 is the recent amendment that was made to really put forth how to deal with the cleaning of the city while protecting the rights of the homeless, while we are informing and working with the homeless community and ensuring that the balance between homeless rights and is balanced with the rights of the residents and the businesses, etc. So we developed a protocol, as Enrique mentioned, that we spent a lot of time working through stakeholder process to ensure that these protocols are clearly outlined how we're going to do our business, and your department was a critical component, and along with LASA and many others. So we have these protocols that we developed a year ago, almost April of last year, and they're in place. They address about 10 protocols and procedures of how to. It's very transparent, it's public, everybody knows how we do our business, and really it's part of how we can get the word out. We don't want to surprise anyone, and at the same time we don't want to be surprised. So we're getting out, putting the word out, letting people know where we're going to be, putting notices, outreach, and then when we go do cleanup, we're going to work with the homeless community and ensuring that they are because really what we're doing is also serving the homeless, making sure the area is clean and safe for the most vulnerable. And who is more vulnerable than the homeless? So cleaning the city and making sure the city is clean is critical for everyone, and it's important that we do that. So we're working very closely with the homeless community in addressing this and the service providers. So let me walk through the different programs that we had. The first one is Operation Healthy Streets, which is the first one that started in Skid Row, and that basically started in trying to address the major concerns by the county health and others. We worked with the community businesses, the BITS, CCEA is here, and we work closely with how we can address this. It's huge business in Skid Row, whether it's the food businesses, fish businesses, all that. And we need to make sure that balance is happening. We started cleaning the area once every 6 months, I believe, and once quarterly. And now, with the resources and that we received from the council and the mayor, we are cleaning every street in Skid Row once every 2 weeks. We're in Skid Row every day, Monday through Thursday, and we're doing the outreach that needs to be done. Everybody knows when we come in what street we're going to be on, and that's in place. The next thing we moved into is Venice. Venice was a critical area too, so we decided that we need to make sure that the Venice area is also being clean, and we agreed with the council office there and the community in that area that the best time to do it is on Fridays before the weekend starts, and that's what we did. Now every Friday we're in Venice cleaning the city streets, the boardwalk, etc., to make sure the area is clean and safe. And the same procedures go, the same protocols apply. There is notification, outreach. There is a process of homeless encampment authorization that we have to go through, very rigorous, to ensure that everything is being done, that we're not compromising anything. And the key component to all this is the outreach that Peter talked about and Lhasa, is ensuring that services are being provided to ensure that's connection between the homeless and the services being provided. And the mayor and leadership in the council decided that we need to ensure that we invest in removing illegal dumping, cleaning the streets from blight, and making sure that's done. And in April 2015, the mayor issued Executive Directive number 8, which we were basically the lead agency in implementing many of it, which is Clean Streets LA, which is developing 4 teams across the city now, working to clean the cities, clean the alleys. There's alleys across the city, streets across the city haven't been cleaned in a long time, and we're removing a lot of trash, a lot of debris, a lot of human waste. But also, there's homeless encampments associated with these cleanups that we have to go through the protocols to ensure these are being done appropriately through our protocols and procedures. Let me show you some, you have probably pictures you'll see. Next one, Gonzalo, keep going. Next one. So you see that a lot of the work that we are doing I'll give you some metrics here on Operation Healthy Streets Skid Row. It shows that we have removed close to 400 tons of waste in 1 year. The amount of fecal waste, human waste, needles that is removed every day is a large number. And in our staff every day, I can't say, can't appreciate them, we all appreciate them a lot, but they're putting their life at risk every day. And we can't do it without the help of LAPD, with that partnership with Lhasa. PD being there side by side with us as we are doing the cleanup. 398 tons of waste is a huge, huge thing. You talk to Venice, the Venice area, Gonzalo, if you show the Venice, what we have done in Venice is a lot of waste that's being removed. The same thing. It's a huge amount of waste being removed. If you move to CSLA and the work in CSLA and the work we're doing in CSLA, these are 4 teams across the city working through prioritization. One thing that we are doing now, we're using data. You have CommStat, we have SANStat, and we kind of work together, and we come together every quarter to do homeless CommStat, that we're partners in that effort. We're looking at the data we're doing. We have actually indexing teams driving across the city, taking pictures of every street in the city of Los Angeles on a quarterly basis and scoring every street based on how clean the street is. That information is funneled in for us to adjust where we clean. And homeless encampments are also included to ensure that support is being provided. So that's a huge important. So you talk about the Clean Streets programs that we're doing. Over the last year, we have removed 12,000 tons of waste. was removed from the city of LA. Imagine a city with that much waste, and how can businesses grow? How can developments come in? Those are critical, but key thing is clean city is a safe city. Then we move to the efforts. There's the outreach effort, the homeless encampments. Go ahead, Gonzalo, keep going. The outreach effort and the protocols are very prescriptive. We work with city attorney, our partners in the city attorney's office, to ensure that the protocols are followed. We train together, we work with your staff to make sure that we're doing the right thing. Todd and I, we talk every day almost. That relationship is there now. It's a personal relationship. We call each other. It's an issue. He calls us. But our staff are there with each other every day. When we do rollout calls, when we go to the whole team rollouts, and our guys are there with them doing the training. Next slide. Next one. And you look at the previous one. Go back one, Gonzalo. Back one more. So this picture shows we have over 2,200 homeless encampments in the city right now we're dealing with. And we're trying to come up with ways how we can manage the resources to ensure that we're doing the right thing and responding in a very effective way. We have our 311 app. People can call and report a homeless encampment for cleanup. But our goal is to clean the city. Our goal is not to relocate, remove homeless. We're not in the business of removing the homeless. We provide the outreach through LASA, but also we clean the city and clean the area to ensure that's safe. But now we're using technology to help us be more effective. So we are authorizing a quadrant in the city. When we go out to clean, we're not just cleaning one location. So if we have a homeless encampment on First and Main, we're not going to just go to that one location. We're going to go into the quadrant around it, 1 block north, 1 block south, 1 block east, 1 block west. And that allows us to make sure that we're efficient, effective, and providing the services. We all have limited resources, but we're doing it in a way that can help LASA do a better job in the resources, because now they're outreaching to an area versus one location, and we don't want them to come back the next week to do the same thing. So the pictures actually speak volume. So this shows you the before and after, and we're very proud of the work that we're doing with your partnership, with the collaboration with LAPD, LASA, and our partners across the city. The work continues. And HOPE is the last effort, and Commander Chamberlain talked about the resources that we just got recently, and as of January we started attaching our resources to the HOPE team. So now you have LAPD, LASA, and LA Sanitation together, basically driving the city streets and dealing with the issues without having to postpone things and trying to align. So we're very effective. I'm very happy with the results that we're seeing in the HOPE and what we're trying to do. Let's go to the last slide, Gonzalo, which is what are the issues and challenges facing us? We have a lot of legal constraints, and Commander Chamberlain talked about a lot of the injunctions and the litigation. Our guys, when they go out to any homeless encampment for a authorization, we take pictures, we do documentation, we have reports that we put in, and every time we clean, there's documentation of everything we pick up. Every waste, human waste, hazardous waste that's disposed of is documented and has to be disposed of effectively. Any clean waste or clean personal belongings is properly packaged, bagged, tagged, and stored for 90 days, and that's critical. But there's a lot of legal constraints that we need to know how we're managing it. We have the Mitchell injunction recently in Skid Row. It kind of impacted how we're moving forward, but we continue to work in addressing these issues. Administrative constraints. In our municipal code 5611, we have to post an area for cleanup between 24 hours and 72 hours. So now, if you have to clean on Monday, it puts a constraint in how we do it. So we have to go on the weekend to do posting, etc. That takes resources, that takes it. So we're trying to align how we address that. Resources, the amount of resources we have. You look at the amount of work we're seeing, just homeless encampments alone over the last year, we've seen an increase from 14 requests for cleanups for a homeless encampment a day to what we have right now is close to 60. So there's a huge increase. A lot of it is because of the awareness of the public and the community. I mean, that's something that goes with as we get out there and let people know about the availability of resources and the technology of 311. We're going to get more calls to do it. The volume, how much is allowed for a homeless individual to have on them? The volume of personal belongings. 60 gallons is what we have currently in the municipal code. How do you manage that? How do you control that? That's a huge thing. I think we need to figure out a way how we can do that in a very respectful, dignified way, and not having to stop anybody on the street that has more than 60 gallons with them. So it's a balance that we're trying to do. Storage facilities. Storage facilities are critical. We are doing involuntary storage. That means the stuff that we put, the stuff that we collect from the streets. But voluntary storage, where can the homeless person put their stuff away when they are going to a medical appointment or to a certain personal things that they have to take care of? I know through Measure Triple H can help us put these housing, these storage facilities that are voluntary, that people can take their stuff and store it and get it off the street. So that's critical. But at the end of the day, I want to say that the collaboration, the partnership with the LAPD, your leadership of Chief Beck and his commanders and Chief Moore, leadership of Enrique and the mayor and the council has really made us move forward. We all are very compassionate about this. It's not just, we take this, we believe in what we're doing every day, and we're very proud of the work we're doing. Every single person that's doing this, they do it just because they see the impact and the benefit that does to the community, and they're very respectful of the rights of everyone across the board. So hopefully we'll continue working together. Your support is critical to move us forward, but thank you for the collaboration and the support.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I believe next is the mayor's office.
Sir, may we have a copy of your PowerPoint?
The one thing I do want to say that's really important, again, just like with LASA, the subject matter expertise that LA SAN provides is actually pivotal to our officers and our personnel. They do not have the ability, the skill set to deal with the amount of items, the amount of belongings, the amount of refuse that's related to a lot of these encampments. And that's one thing that I think is also unique too, is that if anybody feels that encampments should be left, or why is law enforcement intervening or doing it, there's codes for businesses on how to operate and how to function and how to present themselves. There's codes on houses, how they have to have in neighborhoods. And I think it's got to be the same way also with the homeless population. Because, again, if anyone thinks it's ethical or fair or moral to have somebody living in a tent that's full of squalor with rats, with feces, their ideas are mistaken. And so that's, again, where the expertise of LA SAN really comes into play, where they can monitor, control, and bring it down to a manageable amount, but not only for the homeless, but also for the community that we are involved with as well. With that, our another partner has been from the mayor's office. She's been pivotal from the beginning to the end. I'll let her talk and get into it.
Hi, good morning. Elisa Radunia, Homelessness Policy Director for Mayor Garcetti. So greetings on behalf of our mayor and our deputy mayor, Brenda Shockley. I know you've been sitting for a while, so I'll just try to highlight top points to pull it into context. I think the biggest takeaway is that for decades, homelessness has become a law enforcement issue. And through much of the work of the advocates that are in the room and our partners that you've heard from, we recognize that homelessness is far more complex than we ever imagined. There is no single solution, and it requires multiple strategies. 2016 was a pivotal year for a number of factors. I think some of the long-term advocacy work between Home for Good, United Way, to some of the other advocates in the room, our legal advocates, as well as people who have experienced homelessness being organized in groups like LA CAN or Speak Up with Corporation for Supportive Housing. We've also had unprecedented national resources that were delivered to our city under the President Obama's administration. So just in 2016 year alone, we adopted the Comprehensive Homelessness Strategy by the city in alignment with the county. Our strategy has around 64 different action steps that we'll be implementing over the next 10 years. We also had historic one-time funding. Previously, we only funded homeless services at around $15 to $18 million a year. That was it. Last year, we were able to generate $138 million, $70 million from our general fund. We've allocated surplus properties to developers through a competitive process to increase homelessness housing and facilities and reduce the cost of land. Through our voters, in this past November election, we passed Proposition HHH. HHH is a $1.2 billion bond over the next 10 years, but it's for capital only. So it will allow us to build what we call permanent supportive housing, which is an evidence-based housing model that includes services in addition to rental subsidy for our most vulnerable people. That hopefully will create 10,000 units. Also, as you talked about, we passed Measure H at the county level. That will bring in the services that are critical, and that's a $3.5 billion bond over the next 10 years. And we are working very closely with the county of how do we integrate, not duplicate those resources, and really leverage, and call on the other 87 cities within the county to also step up. I would say if you think about with all you heard, how do you just kind of boil down what is our homelessness system? It's in 4 categories. Outreach, which the HOPE team, Reset, and the other programs are a huge part of. It's also building interim and bridge housing. As you talked about what sometimes you hear is service resistant, is where do we actually have places for people to go, and how do we make it more innovative? So it's really building up that supply. It's offering a wide range of supportive services. Not everyone needs mental health. Some people need access to employment. Some people need access to reuniting with family. So being able to really offer flexible services. And of course, permanent housing. And with that, I would say the major barrier is still, how do we humanize this issue? How do we move beyond statistics to stories and to people's lives so that we can get across some of what we call NIMBYism, or the not in my backyard? We're at a moment in time where we actually do have resources, but you would be surprised how many projects have fallen off the docket because community groups have said, no, I don't want this in my community. So we need approval from neighborhood councils and from the business improvement districts and other community groups for basic infrastructure, water fountains and bathrooms. We're far below, and this is through an advocate's report, we're far below United Nations standards. It's unacceptable. We need facilities, as Adele just mentioned, for storage, but also crisis housing, day center. Gita from the city attorney just said, what about a day center for animals so people can go to appointments? So it's things like that that we need to be flexible with, and as well as the housing. So as a system, and as our partner, Commander Chamberlain, has said, are we perfect? Not yet. We have a long way to go, but just if we can make this much progress in a year, just imagine over the next 10 years, and as the mayor always says, shame on us if we don't. Thank you.
Speakers. We also have 3 speakers from community groups, if you want to call them up.
Yes. Okay, thank you. So I think our first presentation will be from Mr. Greg Spiegel, Director of Strategic Initiatives at the Inner City Law Center. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm Greg Spiegel, Director of Strategic Initiatives at the Inner City Law Center. Inner City Law Center is a nonprofit located in Skid Row that provides free legal services to low-income people, many of whom are homeless or at risk of homelessness. We defend illegal evictions to keep people in place. We sue slumlords who aren't maintaining their housing. We represent homeless veterans to get them the benefits they need to be able to afford housing. We also work on policy issues. Inner City Law Center has been in Skid Row since 1980. I've been there since 2009. We at Inner City Law Center are reluctant to call police on matters involving our clients, especially homeless clients and those who have mental illness, post-traumatic stress, or behavioral issues. It's not rooted in any political stance against police. We know police officers have impossible jobs. Every day they deal with people who are at their very worst or experiencing the very worst moment of their lives. The stress, danger, and demands of the job are brutal. We count on their help when we are in danger, and for that we are thankful for their dedication and service. And we acknowledge that we Angelinos expect them to handle the issues that we don't want to deal with, for example, homelessness. For decades, many people's default response to an unwanted homeless person in the neighborhood has been to call the police, but this hasn't worked because police don't have the tools to solve homelessness. In fact, they are often the wrong tool. Homelessness is many things. For most people, it is a poverty issue. For some, it is a mental health issue. For some, it is an addiction issue. But for all homeless people, it is a housing issue. Police aren't trained, equipped, or suited to provide housing, mental health, or substance abuse treatment, so why do we think it makes sense to have them be the city's first responders to homelessness? At root, homelessness is not a criminal issue. Expecting the police to solve the problem is setting them up for failure. To illustrate this, I want to share two stories, or two occasions where police were called in our office since I've been at ICLC, the only two occasions. So in 2014, an inner city law center client named David came into our office. David had a history of mental illness. When he arrived that day, he was anxious. His attorney, Jennifer, took him to her conference room to talk. He told Jennifer that unless he got help very soon, he was afraid he might hurt himself. He asked to be driven to UCLA where his psychologist could help him. Jennifer's supervising attorney, Javier, joined them in the conference room. David shared that he was feeling suicidal. As Inner City Law Center didn't have any mental health experience, Javier and Jennifer suggested talking to someone on a crisis hotline. David agreed. Javier and Jennifer called the line and left the room to give David privacy. In the meantime, Javier and Jennifer discussed how to get David to UCLA. They knew they weren't going to call the police because they knew David had said he had previously been beaten by the police. Whether true or not, it was clear that David had anxiety about the police and they didn't want to escalate things. That, and because it was a health or mental health issue, they decided to call an ambulance. When David completed his call, Javier and Jennifer re-entered the conference room. As they were talking, they looked through the glass door of the conference room to see two LAPD uniformed officers enter the Inner City Law Center office. Apparently, when David was on the crisis hotline, he threatened to kill himself, so the crisis hotline called the police. David immediately became fearful, saying he was afraid he would be beaten by the police. Javier went to the conference room door as the officers tried to enter and asked if there was a mental health unit that could respond to this situation. Javier was thinking of a SMART team or something like that that had specifically trained officers and a Department of Mental Health worker. The officers told him no, there wasn't anything. Javier asked the officers if they would call an ambulance rather than taking him themselves. No, they couldn't. The officers said they could not leave without David. The two officers moved past Javier and into the conference room. As they entered, two more uniformed officers entered the Inner City Law Center offices and joined them in the conference room. Now there were 4 officers in a 12 by 20-foot conference room with a highly agitated David. He was crying out that he did not want to be taken by the police. Now a 5th and 6th uniformed officer arrived along with a senior supervisor. As they approached the conference room, Javier saw an officer in the conference room reach for his taser. Javier rushed into the conference room and announced, "We need a break. You have to get out of the conference room. This isn't going well." The officers didn't move, but instead turned to their supervisor, who thankfully nodded in agreement that they should leave the conference room. Javier explained that David would go willingly in an ambulance, but not a police car, because he feared being arrested. The supervisor agreed and instructed the officers to call an ambulance. Jennifer and Javier stayed with David until the ambulance arrived and David was taken to UCLA. It was a very close call. Things were very close to becoming use of force. When there was no weapon, there was actually no threat to anyone. The second story happened just a few weeks ago, again at Inner City Law Center. On Wednesdays, Dogtown Dog Rescue comes to Inner City Law Center and they provide shots and food and leashes and other helpful services for people in Skid Row, many of them homeless, with their pets. It usually goes off without a hitch. However, on this Wednesday, a gentleman was accused of kicking his own puppy. I actually had an exchange with a guy because he dropped his keys and I helped him retrieve them, and he told to me in a very short conversation that he was struggling with his schizophrenia, and within a minute it was clear he had some mental health issues. While Dogtown Dog Rescue was working him in our office, he continued to behave erratically and threatened his own and other dogs. Fearing for the safety of the dog, Downtown Dog Rescue, without telling Inner City Law Center, called the police. 2 uniformed LAPD officers arrived. The officers cornered the gentleman in a corner of our office, each about 5 feet away, kind of forming a triangle with the man in the top point. The gentleman was standing calmly. In a conversational tone, he would announce to the room, rather than to anyone in particular, "All I was trying to do was to stop my dog from licking feces and urine. That's all I was trying to do." He kept repeating it, nervous and pretty clearly exhibiting mental health issues. The younger of the 2 officers took exception to the gentleman's repeated explanations and answered angrily, "How many times are you going to tell me that? How many times are you going to tell me that? How many times are you going to tell me that?" The young officer stepped closer to the gentleman, repeating it over and over. "How many times, huh? How many?" 2 additional uniformed officers arrived. Fearing that the situation was escalating, one of our staff walked between the gentleman and the younger officer, making eye contact with the younger officers who walked past. The younger officer looked at the staffer and walked over to him. "Can I help you?" he said with irritation. "Yes, I think this gentleman might have some mental health issues," the staffer replied. His reply dripped with sarcasm. "Thanks, I really appreciate that. That is so helpful. Is there anything else you want to tell me? You gave me a look. I can tell you wanted to tell me something." The staffer responded, "Yes. Could you be civil to him?" He again responded with sarcasm. "Thanks, that's really helpful. I'll keep that in mind." He returned to his position, but he stopped and sighed and walked outside for a few minutes. After the junior officer left, the gentleman started again, this time repeating to no one in particular, "They think they save lives. Do you know how many lives I saved in Vietnam? I saved many lives. I saved many lives in Vietnam. I saved many lives in Vietnam. They don't even know." Now the senior officer appeared insulted, walking up next to the gentleman, challenging him, "Do you know how long I served? I served 15 years. He started saying that to the officer started saying that to the gentleman over and over again. Again, it was escalating into a confrontation. At this point, an ICLC staffer distracted the senior officer by asking if he could get the gentleman a chair so he didn't have to stand. The senior officer recovered his demeanor and said, "No, that's okay. I'm just trying to keep the situation calm until we decide what we need to do." The ICLC staffer said he hoped the gentleman wouldn't have to be arrested because he seemed to have some mental health issues. The senior officer said he hoped that too, but that his dog would probably need to be taken. The senior officer remained calm from that point on. A few minutes later, the officers politely took the gentleman outside to a picnic table and talked to him calmly. His dog was taken, but he was not arrested. For us, for Inner-City Law Center, these were two near misses that could have resulted in uses of force and certainly arrests. For us, it confirmed that uniformed officers are immensely valuable in a multitude of situations, but they are not right for every situation. For some people, uniformed officers trigger a fear response. They can be especially extreme for some people with mental illness, a history of trauma, or prior negative experiences with police. For many people, it is about the uniform, the badge, the gun, and how they impact an interaction. We know there are exceptional individuals in the LAPD who may be able to transcend that context, but they are an exception and not the proper basis for establishing police policy. However, in these examples, the problem wasn't just the uniform. In both cases, officers exhibited behavior that escalated the situation, each time causing it to almost bubble over into an arrest and possible use of force. They didn't seem to plan to escalate. Rather, it appeared to just happen, like a computer program that was switched on, as if the officers were anticipating a certain type of confrontation, and when they didn't find it, they were creating it. And these problematic confrontations may be more likely when they involve a subject who is a person of color. In both of the examples I shared, David and the gentleman with the dog were African American men. These stories highlight gaps where there is no appropriate first responder for the public to call. There are other examples, family members who are having trouble with a member of the family who's locked in a room and hurting themselves, and they know someone has problems with the police. They are very reluctant to call the police. We've had clients who've come in under the influence of drugs, which have triggered hallucinations, unable to understand the reality in front of them, and rather than call the police, we kind of leave them to it on their own because we don't know what would happen. These gaps lead us to ask, where are the SMART teams? Why do they only respond after situations have been controlled or resolved? This is frequently after the arrest or a use of force or trauma has been experienced. It's too late. Our proposed solutions for interventions with homeless people and people with behavioral and mental health issues, unless there's an allegation of a threat to another person, the first responder should include a SMART team or someone like them. Rather than a secondary or reactionary role, SMART teams should play lead roles in interactions like the ones that occurred at our office. However, in the past, I've been repeatedly told that SMART teams aren't first responders because the Department of Mental Health doesn't feel it would be safe. Yet in conversations with the Pasadena Police Department, they have something they call the HOPE program, which partners an officer with County Department of Mental Health, and they are first responders, and they've had repeated successes de-escalating potentially violent encounters. If they do it in Pasadena, we can do it even better in Los Angeles. Uniformed officers, in addition, uniformed officers in high areas of concentration of homelessness should be trained in de-escalation and working collaboratively with SMART teams and community organizations. With the SMART team taking the lead role in these interactions, the uniformed officers should support at a distance, ready to intervene if the situation turns violent, but not until then. And finally, generally, people should be allowed to focus on what they do well. Therefore, let outreach workers conduct homeless outreach. While there are talented exceptions, and I've heard some nice things about the LAPD's HOPE program, our experience and the research is that outreach is best done by outreach professionals. They have the specific training, the professional and personal background, and the passion to do it well. Let's not make the department have to be all things to all people. That's fun. Thank you.
Commander Chamberlain, at some point, not today, because we are certainly tight on time, but I would like a comparison between the Pasadena program and our program. Would be interested to hear about how they're handling this. Great, thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Mark Casanova, the Executive Director from the Homeless Healthcare LA.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here. And Rep, I'd say ditto to what Greg said, but I'm going to add a caveat that is particular to my group. But absolutely, yeah, let professionals that do it right do it. I'm that Homeless Healthcare Los Angeles. So I'm here to talk a little bit, to land the ship, to give you a little bit. You heard a lot from the funding agencies that provide the funding that, help all these services throughout the city. My organization, just to give you a glimpse of how we go about doing it, integrates all of it. So a lot of the players that were here, I get funding from LASA, from Department of Health Services, and an array of funders. And it allows us to do what we do, which is really, we're sick of homelessness, and we definitely want it to not be around. So, but what makes us unique, besides our mission, but makes us unique is that we're a harm reduction, trauma-informed, and housing first with integrated services. It's a big mumbo-jumbo of words that say it's about services and not punishment. It's about opening the door. It's about retention. It's about keeping people in services. So we embrace philosophicals that don't necessarily land really gently with people. We're constantly pushing things to get people to understand that in order to work with folks that do the things they do and behave the way they do, you have to meet them where they are. You have to be open to that. And we're an organization that not only specializes in doing it, but helps train people. So who we are, we want to improve the health of people, the quality of life. We want to reduce harm. We want to provide non-judgmental environments to do the work. We believe housing is a right, not a privilege. Healthcare is a right. Healthcare is housing. And most importantly, we meet people where they are. We help a lot of people have big program. Pretty much the slides were to entertain you, and I wish I could because it would make this be a bit more entertaining. But let's just boil it down, 3 sites, and the site in particular I want to talk about is the Center for Harm Reduction, which is in Skid Row, which is where, I hate to lay claim to something that's this, I think it's kind of great, but we probably, you can just advance it and entertain. I would just, yeah, why not? But go slow. And that about 5 to 10% of our clients who we work with, roughly 11,000 a year in both sites, but 4,000 to 5,000 out of the Center for Harm Reduction have interactions with the LAPD on a monthly basis. And it's that in particular that I want to address, because we do this fabulous work of mental health, treatment, health care, syringe exchange. We have acupuncture, Eastern meets Western. It's really cool. You actually would enjoy going there to do a little karaoke and get services while you're there. We also work closely with LA Kitchen, and they provide meals for my folks, all for drug injectors, mind you, people that likely are breaking the law. And we open our arms and offer the full array of services to those clients. Housing, you've heard of a lot of the scattered site models. We do Section 8. And interestingly enough, you heard from somebody that talked about jail inreach. It's my program with Tarzana Treatment that is actually conducting jail inreach at the Metropolitan Detention Center. One of the things I suggested to them, they didn't hear me, nor did they find it funny, was that if they didn't arrest anybody for drug problems, they didn't need a program. And I know it's not funny here either. But it's about services and not punishment, from my perspective. People can't get better unless they get the services they need. So we put 100 so people last year in housing. We helped 11,000 people get services. We saved nearly 400 lives last year from a drug called Narcan, naloxone. LAFD and LAPD are now launching a program of Narcan. Really great, because I think the one tenet I like about Narcan or naloxone is you can't get housing if you're dead. So keeping people alive is a great priority, and I applaud the LAPD for taking that on. And I'm going to make a recommendation that we work a little more closely on the Narcan program, because a lot can be done around that. But the target group that I'm most interested in or concerned are the injection drug users we see at the Center for Harm Reduction. And as you know, they're at risk for a lot of things because they have multiple sex partners. They share drugs. They don't go to the doctor as often as they should. They're incarcerated. An array of issues, but it all complicates to STDs, HIV, hepatitis, TB, overdose, and death. So if you prevent people from getting this public health intervention, there's severe complications on the other side, and they're very costly. So an ounce of prevention is going to save a pound of money. And my talk really is to align policing activities with a public health intervention, and I think it's something that can easily be done. Just to give you the day-to-day realities for my injectors that come, and I love drug injectors, they experience regular contact with LAPD. Matter of fact, 5 to 10% of them do it on a monthly basis. Our surveys show that they have poor communication, which would be likely happening on an encounter with the LAPD, but my concern is our clients don't tell and the LAPD doesn't ask. Meaning, if we don't, and we get on our clients to educate them, because they walk around with these little cards because they carry syringes and it identifies them as a client of homeless health care. But, the exchange itself sometimes is a little bit intimidating for our clients, so they don't necessarily come forth with, but they're never asked. And just an interesting stat, of the people that actually reported an incident to us, and this is pretty consistent throughout the years, we did a study a few years back, but it's similar. Nearly half of them reported that their syringes were taken. And of those, 40% reported that they weren't cited or arrested at all for anything. Their syringes were just confiscated, which I think is, in a public health intervention, not a good thing. That if you're taking the tools to keep somebody alive, to keep them from spreading hepatitis, TB, HIV, all those things, we need to rethink that policy and make sure that we promote good public health interventions. Health is a goal we should have overall, a social goal, and it requires us to take action not only in health arenas but in social and economic ones. And that's, I think, what I'm calling for, that we collaboratively work together, because it's going to have a great outcome. It's about protecting people's human rights. Housing is health care. Human rights is health care. So my recommendations would be that, because philosophicals, I think, drive everybody, and I would love for the LAPD to embrace these, to support the right to housing. Absolutely. Make a statement to that effect. We want people to be placed in housing first. We don't want to be displacing people. We do a lot of work to get people there, and the interactions that I describe with my clients, there's a number of details I could give you that affect their ability to keep the housing, that affect their ability to get good health care. Confiscation of medications, of health-related, all that happens on a consistent basis. Support the right to security. We need to stop citing people for arrests. I know it doesn't sound the best statement in this room to say don't cite, don't arrest, but that's the answer. We need to provide housing and services instead. And support public health interventions. Two detailed things I'd like to happen that in particular would work for homeless health care would be to educate LAPD about homeless health care and the work we do out of the Center for Harm Reduction. But because of the laws and policies of syringe access that I think we We have protections, our clients have protections to carry around syringes, and with a little bit of education, I think the LAPD can help us make sure that those stay in the possession of my clients. The Narcan program, you're going to save lives, absolutely. Well, refer that person to the Center for Harm Reduction. It happens in downtown or throughout Los Angeles and the other programs that operate in similar fashion that we do. And we can make sure that that person gets the services, the housing, and all the care that they need. And so, like we collaborated on the Metro Detention Center, yeah, let's collaborate on a Narcan program and see if we can keep people alive. And, you know, good public health interventions is really what homeless health care is about, and I really think that it's possible that we can view the issue a little bit differently. I don't, you know, all the programs out there that are doing these great housing programs are wonderful, but drug injectors, injection drug users who are homeless are a particular population that my heart goes out to, and it requires a little deeper intervention and a little bit deeper understanding to the issue, and I hope my words have some impact and effect at how we create some policies. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our final presentation is from Mr. Pete White, the Executive Director of the Los Angeles Community Action Network.
To get the PowerPoint up.
Good morning.
Good morning, good morning. So my name is Pete White and Ariana Alcaraz with the Los Angeles Community Action Network. Pleased to present our work this morning before this body. Quickly, LA Community Action Network is a community-based organization rooted in 3 strategies: community organizing, community improvement, and community services. There was a lot of conversation this morning about a human rights-based framework. In 2016, the Los Angeles Community Action Network was granted consultative status with the United Nations, right? And so a lot of what we're doing now is documented and held in the United Nations. Today's presentation will focus on 3 areas of our expansive body of work. We'll talk a bit about policing of women in Skid Row. Women's voices were indeed missing this morning, and so we want to make sure they are elevated. 2, we will talk about policing of people with mental illness, both in Skid Row but citywide. And then finally, we'll talk about a few recommendations rooted in some work we've been doing in a number of years. Before we start the presentation, I would say it's hard not to miss LAPD's repeated reminder of not being in charge of housing. However, enforcement clearly plays a role in whether or not people are housed. It erodes gains that could be made on measures H and triple H. It creates barriers that are oftentimes insurmountable, right? People are locked out of housing. And it also works against the goals of ending homelessness and flies in the face of federal funding guidelines. And it places Los Angeles at risk of losing resources. 2 other quick things. Operation Healthy Street was mentioned today, but what was not mentioned was the roots of Operation Healthy Streets. Operation Healthy Streets was a community-based initiative of folks out of the Skid Row community who said, we see a public health crisis and we are going to bring all players to the table. And so all the conversation that you heard today about Operation Healthy Street is rooted in the experience of folks behind us putting in the hard work to make sure government responds. The second thing that I have to mention, there was a lot of talk about the expansion of SMART teams. But there was also, again, no conversation about where that expansion came from. There was no conversation from Chief Beck about continuous meetings we had with him and Chief Paysinger in terms of expanding the SMART teams in the Skid Row area. Continuous conversations. Chief Beck said to us, we ain't got no money to pay for it, but if you go and find the money, we will definitely put teams out. A 15-month campaign, which led to Department of Mental Health. It was rigorous, Department of Mental Health, Supervisor Solis, and others. And we finally got the okay that we would get the resources to move forward with the SMART teams. We came back to the LAPD, and Chief Beck looked at us squarely and said, all right, you got the money, but we're still not expanding. About 2 months after that, there was a press conference at the Star Hotel by the Chief of Police, the Mayor of the City of Los Angeles, DMH, and Supervisor Hilda Solis. Guess who was not invited to that press conference? The folks who worked hard for 18 months, 15 to 18 months, to make sure all of those resources were centered and anchored on the needs of the community. So I think it's always important when we have people who come before you to present that you know where the genesis of this movement happens. And it happens on the ground by people who are impacted, but organizing to improve their communities. Let's hear a bit about women living in Skid Row.
Yes, good morning. So as Pete mentioned, my name is Ariana. I'm a member of LA Comm, but I'm also a member of the Downtown Women's Action Coalition. We do a women's needs assessment. Since 2001, we've been doing it every 3 years, and it's really a way for us to gather data that is used to organize for more resources to come into the community and meet the needs of women. Specifically because homelessness amongst women continues to increase. There's a couple things that came out in the needs assessment that point to policing in Skid Row when it comes to interactions with women. 33.6% of women surveyed that they did have an interaction with LAPD, and 13% of those women experienced inappropriate or abusive behavior by a police officer. This points to a recommendation that we had in which all city departments should have some kind of trauma-informed care, specifically LAPD. Another statistic that came out that we wanted to share with you all was 42% of women reported having poor or fair hearing. And of those women, 62% were arrested or cited. And the reason that I bring this statistic to you all is most of the citations and arrests that are made in Skid Row have to do with quality of life violations. 5611, 4118D, and usually those come with a warning, and they're usually done by a police officer in their vehicle. And we've seen it happen for Operation Healthy Streets when they go through the street and they'll do some kind of a warning, and then they'll come in again and start citing people. The reason I bring this up is because it kind of points to the need for a police officer, that those warnings are not working. And I think it's leading to women being cited or arrested and not being able to hear the warning, because compared to 16% of women who reported their hearing as good or excellent, only had 16% of them interacted with police officers and had a citation. So women who reported poor hearing had more of an interaction with the police officer. So we thought that that was something that we wanted to bring up to you all. We recently toured the Sobering Center that is, it was opened in January of this year. And the reason we wanted to bring this to you all is that since January of 2017, 170 people have been admitted into the Sobering Center. LAPD can refer people to this center, and out of the 170 people that have been admitted, 93 of them have been brought in by LAPD. One of the things that the Sobering Center does is that they actually go out into the community and pick people up. So in fact, an LAPD officer does not necessarily have to take someone in. And what we found was that of the 93 people that were being taken into the Sobering Center by LAPD were coming in with citations. So it is the mission of the Sobering Center, and they have it in their brochure, is that their mission is to provide an alternative for people who might be arrested for petty crimes, which is probably being intoxicated. But the LAPD is still citing people and taking them when they can actually just call the Sobering Center to be that first responders and to pick people up. This could also be done with the homeless health care, right? And where LAPD does not need to respond to a mental health crisis, but rather try to refer people to other resources in the community rather than being the first and all answers to every single issue that is happening in the community.
And so we continue to hear in this room and in this conversation the word de-escalation, right? Aspirations toward de-escalation. However, what we continue to see in real time is escalation. I know earlier when you asked Lassa to give you sort of the racial breakdown on homelessness, and he sort of highlighted African Americans, I think I have to dig just a little bit deeper on that. In 2015, in Lassa's homeless count, it was found that 1 in 22 African American men in Los Angeles was homeless. 1 in 47, African American women were homeless, and that's compared to 1 in 254 all other genders and races, right? And so when you hear the 40% and the disproportionality around our 9% or 8% of the population, it's important to put that in its proper perspective. It's important also to ground this conversation around mental health in real case studies, right? The first case study really quickly is Carlos Ocaño, May 24th, 2014. An immigrant looking for sanctuary. An immigrant looking for sanctuary who has lived in Skid Row for quite some time, and who everyone knew in Skid Row had an issue with mental illness. The police department knew as well. He would climb in trees. He would climb up to get away from the ground street noises. On May 24th, he climbed on the roof of a store. The LAPD was deployed. The fire department was deployed. SWAT was deployed. Not SMART, SWAT was deployed. He was coming down a ladder to get a pack of cigarettes that they had left for him in order to coax him. And he was shot with a projectile and knocked off the roof, and he fell to his death. That is not de-escalation. We all remember Charlie Kunyang, Brother Africa, right? It's interesting in the Brother Africa case, the officer, Francisco Martinez, who was the first responder, and this is one of the things that we will highlight in our recommendations. As someone said earlier, SMART teams can't by policy be first responders. But I think as a body, you should re-examine that an officer with a gun who is trained, right, to de-escalate should in fact be a first responder in known situations of mental illness. Francisco Martinez knew Brother Africa. In court for the Trishawn Carey, she was the African-American woman who picked up the baton. Francisco Martinez took the stand and he said this under cross-examination. He said, he was talking, he was babbling, that's just how they talk. I don't know what he was saying, he was just babbling. Babbling led to death. He was just babbling. And then the last, March 4th, 2017. Another gentleman on Broadway in Olympic. Just a few weeks ago. Everyone knew this gentleman. Would sit next to this hamburger stand, right? But on this day, within minutes of LAPD arriving, there was no call to SMART. There was no call to MEU. There was just gunfire. There was death, right? And so when we continue to talk about de-escalation, we must really know what that means. Could you change to the next slide? And so there's some conversation about SEI to reset. So under SEI, 19,000 arrests in the first 2 years, 24,000 misdemeanor citations in the first 2 years. Since reset was announced, tickets at our citation clinic, which we operate every Wednesday night, have gone up about 45%. And so those presentations about we doing it differently, citations continue to increase, not decrease. Eric, could you play, if possible, when we talk about name changes, see, this is what we call getting it on.
Just improv now, y'all. That's okay.
So what we're trying to play for you when we talk about reset to SCI,
He is now
and if you could run that back, Eric, is not our voices, but the voices of LAPD
still works on Skid Row.
when they talk about the changes or the lack of changes in their programs.
That means it's his job to go out and talk to people and try to connect them with the services they need all day long. He tells us he is one of 4 officers assigned to outreach out of a total of 54 reset officers. And you're a part of the reset team, right?
Yes.
And that was used to be called Safer Cities Initiative.
Correct.
So it's the same.
It's the same thing. The name just changed, but we do exactly the same thing.
When we ask another officer, she says, yeah, we're policing more aggressively, zero tolerance type stuff. But we're also trying to be more fair. Another former SCI officer said, same thing, different smell.
And so again, we heard a lot this morning, folks coming up talking about all of these acronyms and all of these names, but the distance between who sits in front of you and what is felt and heard and seen in enforcement is vast. I want to pass out, and then we'll be done, a community-based, you're just working for the city today, make it happen, make it happen. A community-based proposal to improve mental health care and decrease police intervention, arrest, violence, and incarceration among people with mental illness. This was the formation document that we used to expand the SMART teams and to do our policy work at the county and the city level. I would urge you to turn the page and go to the LA City and the Police Department section. It's page 2. One of the things that we wanted done was to remove the Safer Cities Initiative Task Force from Skid Row, because as you've heard, more officers doesn't mean less force, it means more force. They've removed it, but they just renamed it. We also are pushing to end LAPD's practice or policy of utilizing the Central Bureau's SMART team solely or primarily within the Central Division building. So instead, and so what that means is currently anyone who has any symptoms of mental illness is not dealt with on the street. They're placed in handcuffs and they're taken to the police department. The point of intervention is on the street. It's not after someone is handcuffed. That's where de-escalation happens. We also wanted to ensure that all Central Division officers are appropriately using the NEU triage desk and resources. We wanted to expand the SMART teams to ensure citywide coverage. We've done that, but we still don't see those SMART teams on the streets. We want to create a policy, and the policy directives that we're talking about now is for this commission, not for the LAPD, it's for this commission. We want you to create a policy and standard practice for SMART teams' response to police calls from buildings dedicated with people with mental illness. In our Genesis in downtown Los Angeles, police were called to a building solely for people living with mental illness. Police got to the door and said there was some sort of knife, and the person inside was shot. Right? Why would we not have SMART officers who are specially trained go to units that are specially developed for people with mental illness? This is a policy recommendation for this body. And then lastly, increase awareness and utilization of CAMP's activities in the Skid Row community. And so CAMP is a case assessment management program as part of the mental evaluation unit, and it's staffed by sworn investigators. And its primary function is to identify services for those suffering from mental illness and helping to place them in housing. Didn't hear any of that today about these services that exist, but these are the policy recommendations that we've been pushing and that we will continue to push here and other places in the city. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, real quick, I think a lot of that was really positive because, again, although we had different ideals, different ideology, I think a lot of it was very unique amongst all 3 speakers, is that, one, the need for improved training. And we are, without question, I think, been very proactive on that as far as our training. I think our numbers spoke volumes about the number of officers that we were getting through this year that we did not get through last year. So I think that was very, very positive. Specifically related to clinicians being the outreach workers, again, I think that's where the HOPE model really comes into impact, where, again, LAPD is not the subject matter experts on what happens, but we have the clinicians assigned through LASA, which, again, it's very positive to see that we are on the same line with that. Regarding Narcan, again, I'm happy to work with the group and with the organization doing it. I would love to get their subject matter expertise on the past things that they have done, and I look forward to incorporating that into what we do as an organization and LAPD in the next couple of months and years. And the body-worn video, the technology has allowed us a huge thing, which we did not have a while ago. And when I heard about the females, the statement regarding the female and the ability to hear, the one thing that we have been able to do as an organization with the new technology on the body-worn video, we are now able to capture the warnings. And we have actually done pulls where we have gone in and done spot audits and spot checks to verify that the officers are doing that. In relation to a lot of the other statements, again, I think it's important and really imperative to think you as the Board of Police Commissioner and the Chief, what he has done is that a lot of our efforts and a lot of our duties are not just strictly restricted to Skid Row. We have to look at it from a department-wide level, from a citywide level, and that's really where we have strived to do our best. The work specifically related to Skid Row with Reset, again, I think it's important to also realize that there are some huge issues that are going on in the Skid Row area that do involve a lot of the things that we talked about earlier, and crime without question is one of them. Although Skid Row is a very, very small area within Central, it makes up less than a quarter mile of the complete makeup of the entire division. About 47 to 48% of the violent crime and crime, Part 1 crime, comes out of that area. So that goes to show that, again, we need to have a balanced approach to our law enforcement. And also, Central, unfortunately, which has been, it's terrible and it's tragic, since the beginning of the year, there's been 5 homicides in Skid Row. Last year at this time, I think we had 1 homicide. So obviously, the need for focused, fair, concise, ethical, constitutional policing to avoid people being killed in that area or any area in the city that involves encampments is important. And with that idea, too, we wanted to make sure as a department that we are striving not just for the enforcement component or the arresting component, but also the alternatives. And that's where we've had a great partnership with our city attorney. And we've looked at the opportunity, as opposed to just doing arrest, doing a program which is called Alternative Prosecution Program. And if I could, I'd like to have Gita come up and talk real quickly about what she and her team are doing to impact that.
And I'll be quick. I know you guys have been sitting for a while. I'm Gita O'Neill, and I'm the new Director for Homeless Services, Policies, and Strategies for the City Attorney's Office. We want to talk about quickly our few strategies we have. I have Deputy City Attorney Gina Domenico and Deputy City Attorney Jamie Larson. So on top of the regular traditional criminal prosecution that we do, many of you know about our neighborhood prosecutor program. Those prosecutors work in the fields. They're assigned to police divisions. They work on all sorts of different problems for the residents. Homelessness is not just in encampments. People also go into vacant homes, vacant lots. Our neighborhood prosecutors work hand in hand with the SLOs and with the HOPE teams in addressing those sorts of problems at a very individualized level with HUD, DBS, and a lot of different city agencies. We have 2 great innovative programs also. I'm going to let Jamie Larson, who runs our chronic nuisance program, talk about her program first.
Hi, good morning, and thank you to the Commission for the opportunity and for your service. I want to talk about 3 projects that I'm managing now, and I want to introduce 3 caveats before I get started. The first is that as a criminal justice intervention, these projects do not specifically look to capture homeless people, although people who are homeless make up a big chunk of the population that these projects will affect. The second thing is that these projects are very new in their development. I've only been in the chronic offender position for about a month. And so I have 3 projects I want to talk about. They're very new. The third thing is we are looking at points of intervention all along the intercept model, from pre-enforcement community intervention to post-arrest or pre-booking diversion to pre-filing determinations to post-filing or post-sentencing determinations. So looking at who is best suited, who we can have the most effective intervention with at all points along the intercept model. So the first project I want to talk about is a pilot project that's ongoing right now at our downtown courthouse. This project focuses on drug possession offenders who are eligible for Prop 36. So Prop 36 was initially geared toward felony possession. It has a long period of expectation and treatment. And since those offenses are now misdemeanors, it's been a poor fit. 75% of people who are entitled to earn dismissal of their cases never enroll in treatment, and don't even make their next court date. So the system at all points is failing to avail these defendants the opportunity to earn the dismissal that the system entitles them to. Through a small pilot project in collaboration with Homeless Healthcare Los Angeles, with the Department of Public Health, Substance Abuse Prevention and Control, and with the Defense Bar, we put together a pilot that places a navigator from Homeless Healthcare Los Angeles into the courthouse. Treatment is free because it's covered by AB 109. The services are right there for immediate access, and we reduce the treatment obligation to 12 weeks of harm reduction-focused drug treatment engagement. At that point, once a person finishes 12 weeks, the prosecutors are dismissing those cases and successfully terminating probation. It just started in October. We've had about 100 people go through, and people are finishing. People are finishing. We're just getting the first wave of people completing treatment. A handful of people are volunteering to stay on for more treatment because they feel the program has benefited them. That's entirely apart from any obligation on the case. So we're working to see what we can do to grow access to substance use services in the courthouses beyond just downtown. The second project is the Chronic Offender Project, and it's an interesting name. I like to think of it as a recidivism prevention project. So we are working to identify our most frequent 200 to 250 misdemeanor level recidivists. So this is a different population than Commander Chamberlain was talking about with people who are exhibiting violence in encampments. We're expecting with this misdemeanor population that these are going to be homeless, mentally ill, drug-dependent individuals who cycle in and out of the system. The goal is to identify these folks, and for those who are appropriate, advise social services in the area to say, we believe this person's at risk of picking up another offense. Can you connect with them before the system does? Or to flag those cases so that when they do go through court, I'm prepared as a prosecutor to put together an alternative sentence, something that reconnects a person with housing, something that maybe results in a dismissal, something that has a service-oriented solution under the hypotheses that improved health will mean reduced recidivism. That project is just starting. We're looking at first identifying folks and then seeing how we can categorize them into groups where we can be the most help. The third project, we have funding for this. We have an application in for funding for this project through the Prop 47 funds. There are a lot of good projects who applied for that funding stream. We don't know what the awards will look like come June. But this is a project developed for South LA in collaboration with Chief Scott, who I know is now in San Francisco, now Commander Woodyard, and Sergeant Shannon Enox from South Bureau. A lot of work went into this, a lot of community work with local providers, and a lot of needs assessment to see, what can we do to prevent people from entering the system on Prop 47 level drug cases. What we came up with was a 3-tiered approach. The first tier is is entirely separate from law enforcement, but it's an outreach team approach, specifically an outreach team that has co-occurring disorder capacity and medical capacity to do in-field basic wound care or make a call if somebody needs more acute medical care. It is a peer navigator-led project. And so that outreach will be done consistently to one of 5 hotspots, hotspots being areas where there's a strong history of repeated arrests for drug possession offenses. The outreach team, separate from law enforcement. The second component is a pre-booking diversion tool via a 24/7 hotline. So an officer makes a misdemeanor drug arrest, can call a hotline, someone will come down to the station, a peer navigator comes to the station, and that person has the opportunity to opt for booking or opt for pre-booking release with the goal of following up with services. That case is not filed if there's meaningful engagement for a couple of weeks. It's loosely based on the LEAD model. Also, officers would have the opportunity to use that hotline to give out numbers to the hotline for people they may encounter who are looking for help, who are not under arrest. So somebody has an option 24/7 to make a phone call to a navigator who will pick up the phone and talk them through the next few hours and how to get services the next day. The third component is a community oversight panel that ensures that the project is accountable to the community it serves, informed by the best available data and informed by community need. So the Prop 36 project in place now. The other 2 projects, we will keep you posted. Thanks.
Thank you. Hopefully they'll get funded.
Good morning. Can you hear me? My name is Gina DiDomenico, and I supervise the Homeless Court Program for Los Angeles County. I'm a deputy city attorney, but I run a grant-funded program by the LA County Board of Supervisors. My time with you is going to be very brief, so I have handouts for you after with more information and statistics. But essentially, our clinic program gives individuals that are homeless or at risk of homelessness the opportunity to resolve citations by engaging in services rather than paying high fines and fees. Our name is a bit of a misnomer. We're not a court. I operate out in the community in park spaces and rec centers, and I work with Rec and Park very closely to select those. We create a very welcoming environment. We work hard to bring in partners that have mobile showers, that bring art therapy, that bring music, that bring all kinds of things that make folks feel like they're there to get help and to make meaningful connections and relationships. Through the clinic, an individual learns how many tickets they have, and they're assigned an eligible number of hours per ticket. It's a very reasonable number. It's only 4 or 8 hours per ticket. It's very different than the court programs, which ask for hundreds of hours and often a fee. There's no payment with my program. Some citations that qualify are 5611 and 8502. Others include jaywalking and open container violations. The nice thing about the program is that we have everyone in the right room. The public defender is there if someone needs defense counsel. We have the service agency there to make a face-to-face connection so they know the next step is reporting to do their hours with that person. And those hours aren't spent doing service the way that you think of service. It's engaging in mental health, it's AA treatment, and I have a list of those services in your folder. I'll just leave you with a few numbers to give you a sense of how passionate our team is and the support that we have from LAPD and LA City Attorney Mike Fear to continue our work. My program was only built to serve 300 individuals and to host 6 clinics. In our first year, we hosted 12 clinics and enrolled 1,275 individuals. We're now in our second year, and we're still going, but so far we've had 15 clinics. I have a 16th planned May in Venice, and I'm hoping that we reach those same numbers. So I have to thank Commander Chamberlain and Senior Lead Officer Monique Contreras, who've been very helpful and encouraged us to expand our program as far as we can, and also the Mayor's office that's connecting us with 311 so that we can expand service and information to our 311 operators. Thank you very much.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
And we're all free to answer any questions in the future as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we are way over. I believe we have 16 comments on this item, Madam Secretary. So we will allow 2 minutes for comment on this item. I'm not sure what we will do with public comment at this time. At best, we'll cut it to a minute. So we have if you have a comment, ma'am, please submit a card. We are very well. Then you will have your opportunity. So let's, is there a very brief comment you want to make, or are we good?
No, just again, we're striving, we're working. Again, it's not perfect. This will change as time goes on, I can guarantee you. But we have built a lot of things into place that, again, a lot of other organizations throughout the country, throughout the county have not done, and we've made it tangible and real where we're impacting people's lives. So thank you for the support here. Chief Beck, thank you for your vision and your support. And to the other people that spoke, thank you for them, and also for the individuals we've talked to in the homeless community and given us input, guidance, and direction. I appreciate their input as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call the first 5 speakers. We have Estela Lopez, Michael Novick, Michael Hunt, Mr. Herman, and Pastor Q. Jen Marie.
Commissioners, good morning. My name is Estela Lopez. I'm the Executive Director of the Downtown Industrial District BID. Very briefly, the voice that went unheard here today are the folks who deal with this tension every day of every week. The people who I represent, the 600 businesses, and the 5,600 people who come to work every single day to support their families in Skid Row. They are afraid. They need your support. They are afraid of the public health crisis, and they are afraid of the growing violence. You heard from LA Sanitation that they picked up 400 tons in the past year. Our business improvement district, paid for entirely by the property and business owners, not one dime of city money, we picked up 381 tons in the first 3 months of this year. We do see human beings lying in their own filth, lying in their own waste in the gutters, increasingly women. Thank you.
You still have a minute.
That's what I thought.
Beeping it. Yeah, go ahead.
And this human tragedy is one that we experience. We see people injecting themselves, people who are mentally ill, people who make us fear for our safety as we walk from our cars to our businesses. The one thing I will leave with you today as a potential action item, when you look at Skid Row, please do not think only of Central Division. Newton Division comes in at 7th Street, and there is an escalation of these same problems across 7th Street. But across 7th Street, we have to fight for resources with the rest of the city, for sanitation and for police, even though the problems are exactly the same as they are across the street. Skid Row does not stop at 7th Street. Please also give Newton Division your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Michael Novak, and the people is beeping at 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'll just point out today that the LAPD are the enforcers of inequality of life policing, and that the problems that you're talking about are not going to be solved. We're looking tonight at the 50th anniversary of Dr. King's speech against the war in Vietnam, in which he said that the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today is the U.S. government, and the LAPD is part of that problem. You're talking about criminalizing poverty, criminalizing homelessness, criminalizing addiction, and so of course then you have problems. You're talking about enforcing a system that creates displacement and drives people out of their homes, and then you have homelessness. So you're part of the problem. I think the entire reason for this Bob and Puri show today was to justify siphoning off money that the taxpayers approved to provide homeless services into law enforcement and into prosecution. That's exactly what all these people are talking about. So we're here today committing a crime against humanity, and we need to face the line of the crimes you're responsible for. If you say that a person is a criminal but was trying to have their possessions with them when they're forced to live on the street, that's the problem. Recently I saw the film I Am Not Your Negro by James Baldwin, and he talked about the same thing that W.B. Du Bois said almost a century ago. The problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line, the problem of the 21st century the same. The reason you have homelessness in Los Angeles is because of racism and sexism. It's gendered and it's racialized, and nobody up there said a word about it until a few of the community groups finally said the word. When you're living here on stolen land and you have the largest urban population of indigenous people, and you don't say a word about the fact that there are native people living on the streets, that's a problem. When you have people forced into prostitution, people forced into drugs, when you have people who are used as cannon fodder for this empire, and then they're thrown away after they're traumatized and have to live on the streets, that's the problem. You're the problem.
So next speaker, Michael Hunt.
First of all, the biggest problem is jobs. I never heard nobody talk about jobs. The suit and ties down here, you can't solve the homeless problem. They have to solve their own problem. Number two, we solved the problem once before. You have to go to a homeless park, get them off Skid Row and make a homeless park. They can't live in four walls. The last thing is that if you don't participate in what you do and what you say, and you send all the police officers out there, I'm not going to participate with you if I see a police officer. Now, I'm going to give you a good example. I work with Mark Rena at Venice, and we solved a lot of problems because it was called community-based policing. What all of you guys forget is called community-based policing. You have to work with the community. The community has to solve the problems, not the suit and ties. That don't mean shit. I mean, you want to get them off the street? I was homeless. Mark really got me a place in 2 weeks. What do you got to say about that? LAPD can't get you a place in 2 weeks. They can't get you nothing. If I'm homeless, I want a sandwich. I want some French fries. I want a soda. I want something that's going to fill my belly. Then I'm going to talk to you. You guys just go with no mediation, go in there with people that don't understand. These people understand. They solve the problems, not the suit and ties. This is a whole bunch of bullshit. I heard a whole bunch
Next
of
speaker, please.
No, I still got 29 seconds on there.
Oh, sorry.
See, there you go. I still got 29 seconds.
I can't see that.
And if somebody told me I couldn't walk in a public area, I would sue you. Article 1 and Article 2 of the Constitution.
Mr. Herman, please.
No jobs, just simple ideas with no action. But it's the homeless that suffer. The harm that comes before you is not a criminal element, it is the element. All of you, the developer who sits up there and chairs this committee to put homelessness on the street. It's the chair who sits there and makes judgments against those who are homeless since 2008 and continues to look at his iPhone because that's how Jewish stupid he can be. Yeah, I'm not a hater against anyone's belief. I'm only a hater when it comes to God's people. See, Mr. Soborov, let's talk about the Bible. Revelation 21:3-4. It says, wipe out all those tears from your eyes and fear no more. But fuck that dream, because I have a better dream. A dream that opens up doors to homelessness. Doors that can be created by an action of enforcement called the DOJ, Department of Justice, to investigate the crimes against humanity for fraudulently abusing federal dollars to build high-risers and no name for public's interest called homelessness or the war on homelessness. And then again, Mr. Soborov, you notice I'm only speaking about you because I love kosher dogs. They're really good in the weekend, except I can't afford a kosher dog because I'm homeless. But the kosher dog up there wants to prejudge me because in 2008 I was homeless. And to this day I'm homeless. That's why I'm seeking assistance, not through any of you donkey shows. No offense to the women that actually listen, but to the men up there that think they got so much pride to watch us stay here for 3 fucking hours and be bored out of our fucking mind under 42 U.S.C. 1983, Cohen versus Brandenburg. You know what? That's a bunch of shameful bullshit. Get your shit together and do your job.
Speaker, please.
The next speaker, Pastor Q, followed by Patricia Mendoza, Michael Williams, Kai Utsumi.
Good afternoon. Do I go first? Patricia Mendoza?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Regarding the homeless, I was just real quick, I was born and raised in downtown. I'm right now working as a caregiver 7 days a week, so I usually do the red line, the green line, the bus. I'm like a gypsy out there, and I see a lot of things. It's really sad at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning in the day. It's really sad to see downtown the way it is, and every time I go to downtown, with all due respect, I think about the city councils, and I think about the mayor, and I say, wow, this man is in power. He has the funds. He has a voice. When is he going to clean up downtown and the people that are surround him? It's very sad to see women, young guys that have mental problems. It's sad to see all these people on drugs. Every case is different, and even though you offer help, they will reject the help because you need experts and professional people that at least have 30 years how to know how to deal with these people. It's really sad to see a woman naked and dancing in the streets on Broadway and Hill Street, and when you call police officer or one of the guys in the bikes, no one shows up. And here you have families and children and going in downtown. When I go to the city of Glendale, I say, wow, how beautiful. Here you have these immigrants, Armenian and Russians. Glendale is clean, everything is organized. You don't see all this bad stuff. It doesn't mean that bad stuff doesn't happen. And I'm thinking, what is it that the city of Glendale is doing different than what downtown and the mayor and all the committees are not doing? The sad part is that all of you guys and the city councils are getting a good salary. At the end of the day, they're going to get a good pension. And we, the people, are the ones that we suffer. We're the ones that pay the tax and say we're the ones that pay for the broken plates and the bad choices that many of you make, which is called wrongdoing and negligent. Please, there's a vacant lot in Chinatown. It would be good to put tents to these people, showers, and kind of go through the process to understand where these people are coming from. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you. Michael Williams, not present. Kayu Tsumi, followed by Gertrude Barnes and Christine Gatson.
I'm a member of LA CAN, and I totally support Pete White's statement. If LA CAN has no SMART team in Skid Row as first responders, social workers allied with LA CAN should be the first responders, not the LAPD. Reset, Safer City Initiative is just more police repression in Skid Row against black homeless lives. This commission needs to break with American civilization's long history that black lives does not matter. American civilization has repressed and exploited black lives from slavery and Jim Crow racism, considering him just 3/5 of a person, to that was under slavery, to Jim Crow racist lynching after the Civil War, to perpetuate police brutality against blacks, to mass incarceration, which LAPD has a significant role in, and the anti-human attitude against black Skid Row homeless population, painting them as lazy or criminal. Always. Never a good part of them. It's so one-sided against black lives. Police in uniform with weapons and an authoritarian attitude do not see black homeless population as if their lives matter, but as subservient
Thank you, sir.
inferior.
The
First
next speaker,
responders
please.
should not be the LAPD.
Gertrude Barnes, followed by Christine Gatson, Kayama Bryant, and Tiffany Guerra.
I've been a member of this city for over 60 years, and I have watched this population grow, and I know that it is based on neglect and also the violence that is perpetuated by our law enforcement officers that make every little thing that blacks in particular do a crime. And my question then is, how do these people come in and help us if I'm getting people in my office with tickets for jaywalking, for standing on the curb, and these are the folks that now the law enforcement wants to come in and help? These folks are not social scientists. You know this. You know that in order for us to address the problems that are occurring on the street, we need people who have been trained to go in and work with them. And I'm not talking about an 8-hour training. I'm talking about folks who do this for a living. And it really upsets me that what they're doing should be unlawful. Y'all need to be arresting them for trying to take our money, because the money was set aside to address the social issues that are occurring on Skid Row. And what these folks are doing is trying to take that money and put it in law enforcement. You need to stop it.
Thank you for your comment.
Christine Gadsden.
Good morning. Afternoon now. My name is Christine Gadsden-Michaelak, and the first thing I'd like to address is how much I resent the fact that women weren't talked about until the very end of the speakers. The lifetime risk of violent victimization for homeless women with mental illness is 97%. 97%. You might as well round up and say that every homeless woman with mental illness is going to become the victim of violence at some point in her life, and that is unacceptable. Unacceptable. 18% of Los Angeles' houseless population are houseless as a direct result of domestic violence, and I didn't hear that discussed once. It's very disheartening. The officer who was speaking first talked about the weaknesses that exist in the current policies, and under that was lawsuits and injunctions, which make it harder for LAPD to do their jobs. If LA had adopted policies of compassion and empathy 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago, I don't know, from the beginning, you would not have these lawsuits. When you go in and recklessly and sometimes illegally and dangerously criminalize and subsequently harass homeless people, you are going to get sued, and you should get sued. And it's your own fault if that's an impediment to you doing your jobs. Accessibility, my favorite topic. Correspondence from cities should be in accessible fonts, always. In the largest ever recorded survey of literacy among houseless population, found that 51% lacked the basic literacy skills for everyday life. That means that written communications are not sufficient.
Thank you.
Kayama Bryant, Tiffany Guerra, followed by Sylvia Hernandez and Yvonne Michelle Autry.
I just wanted to challenge a narrative that we heard from the officer who was first presenting, who I believe is seated right here, the commander. So we heard the community's children being evoked numerous times as a reason why we should be concerned about homeless encampments. We heard how it's inconvenienced children when encampments encroach on areas where children used to walk or where encampments are too noisy. The commander asked that we feel bad for folks who are inconvenienced in this way. At one point, I believe, and I might be wrong, the commander even raised his own child as a reason that we should address the potential danger and severe threats within these encampments. And this took me aback as a white person in a room listening to another white person who is in considerable power in this room, just to reflect on how this narrative has been used throughout history for very violent, oppressive reasons, this idea of white fear and how we have to fear this other population, the houseless, black and brown communities. And it bothers me, it disturbs me. Shame on you, Commander, for raising that several times here in this room as a narrative. Shame on you all for not challenging that. The reason for addressing houselessness, the houselessness crisis here in LA, is because of their humanity and because of ours. It's not because of some imagined racist threat. You need to give more time to the folks in this room and in this community that know about the community and know what the solutions are and are offering them to you. You need to give more time to folks like Pete White and the folks at LA Can, and not to people like this commander who keep pushing this racist narrative.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sylvia Hernandez, Yvonne Michelle Autry, Alex Davis, and Oscar.
It's just such a farce. It's just such a farce because, what do you do in a country where the police are the terrorists, the police are the mercenaries, the police are harboring those like the CIA, right, that are torturing, experimenting on people, falsely labeling us as bipolar, manic depressive, schizophrenic, psychotic, paranoid, and delusional. And this is a predominant number or the majority of black women, women of color, which of course Stop LAPD spying exposes, to justify ritual rape, abuse, torture, sacrificial ritual, and then murder by claiming that she was prone towards suicidal tendencies. I know because I'm a survivor. A police officer has offered to show me his power tool, and I complain, and at every opportunity that I have to complain, it's always labeled as within policy and procedure. How many times have police officers sexually harassed me, thinking that I was a crackhead on Skid Row? Okay, with no justice. Where do you go in a country when the police are terrorizing the people, justifying it and covering it up with these experiments, covert and confidential, perpetrated against black people, people of color, and some white people that you have put in the trash? Where do we go? These experiments are covert and they're illegal, perpetrated by Secret Service, service agents, counterintelligence, and I'd like to bring to light, I believe it's Municipal Code 1315, which exposes the fact that agents get into our rooms. Okay, they're spraying my room, they're hiring the Mexican mafia and maintenance men to come in and they want to service me with passwords and shots because I'm a survivor. Most of the women that have been through what I have gone through are dead. They're dead, justifiable, and in those reports there was no human involved. Called 5150 and or crack addicted, and I'm none of those. I'm educated. You understand? And you're fully liable for this extermination of black women and people that you don't want to look at in your backyard.
Thank you. The next speaker, Sylvia Hernandez. Alex Davis.
Good afternoon. My name is Alex Davis with the Center at Blessed Sacrament in Hollywood. I wanted to thank the LAPD for the increased focus on homeless engagement in our communities. These new resources and increased trainings have been invaluable to our neighborhoods. For a short time in 2016, we were fortunate enough to have a dedicated HOPE team in the Hollywood division. Unfortunately, with the team now assigned to the entire West Bureau, this relationship has suffered. Relationships are key. With homelessness outreach and engagement, the relationships must be consistent, persistent, and sustained. Productive relationships are created between officers and service providers when you're a regular presence in our community. Now that you're in our neighborhood once a week with the HOPE teams, those relationships are beginning to frail and fall apart. Relationships were also built with individuals who are homeless through regular engagement. When we have a consistent, ongoing presence in our community, outcomes improve. We would respectfully ask that until this crisis has been abated, that the HOPE teams be expanded to service the Hollywood division, to service each division individually, including the Hollywood division. Additionally, we ask that we clearly define outreach in Los Angeles. Our city and county are building up emergency response teams to respond to the crisis in emergency situations, which is a huge need in Los Angeles. But we also need to focus on long-term engagement and outreach strategies, building up community-based outreach teams that are embedded in our neighborhoods and focused on building trust and rapport with the most acute members of our homeless community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oscar.
I think it's a big conflict of interest to have Steve Soboroff as a vice president on this commission, especially today as we talk about homelessness. Steve is a land developer in Los Angeles and could possibly benefit from displacing people from their homes and clearing out homeless people for his projects. And who does the work of displacing? The Los Angeles Police Department. Also, Steve's formal education is a bachelor's and master's degree from the Department of Finance, Insurance, and Real Estate at the University of Arizona. So how does that education, along with land development experience, place you as former president and now vice president of the oversight for one of the largest and most problematic police departments in America? Now the city has allowed a new law to pass through which makes sleeping in your car a crime. Is that right? Matt Johnson, is that right?
Yeah, it's right.
Okay. Each fine is over $100 plus court costs for someone who's already sleeping in their car. What do you think that's going to do to our homeless population? Doesn't make any sense. Exactly. But that's what we're doing. That's what we're allowing to happen here. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments.
We have no other comment cards for this item, sir. We have 19 comment cards for general comment.
Before we go to... Okay, on the homeless item or on public comment?
Public comment.
Okay, we have not gotten to public comment yet. Before we go to the public comment, do we have any action items on this issue?
Thank you. I wanted to first thank Commander Chamberlain and the entire department for your leadership, especially in implementing some extraordinary best practices and persevering against very difficult obstacles to reduce the criminalization of people experiencing homelessness in Los Angeles. I also want to thank the community representatives who came and spoke, especially those from Inner City Law Center, LA CAN, and Homeless Healthcare Los Angeles, for sharing those stories. That is why we are here today, to hear those stories. It's part of our mission to listen and to keep these perspectives in mind as we create policy. So I'd like to ask for a few report backs since we're short on time right now to address questions. The first is if the department can report back on how the department responds to calls where the person involved is believed to have a mental illness or is in a state of mental crisis, to address some of the stories and questions that were raised today. How have these practices changed over the last year? Are there plans to change or grow these approaches? Secondly, I would like some additional information on use of force involving people who are homeless or suffering from mental illness. Specifically, what steps the department is taking to reduce use of force incidences, any trends, and analysis of the number of people who are homeless or mentally ill who are involved in a use of force incident. To understand the enforcement piece better, I'd like some additional analysis done on lesser uses of force and arrests where individuals are arrested for resisting or obstructing an officer. So I'd like to ask our Inspector General to perform this analysis and report back to us with a public report, and to concentrate on incidences where body-worn video is available. And finally, I really appreciated the homeless CompStat meeting I sat in on, and have been very impressed with the depth and breadth with which they tackle these issues. So I'd like to request that the following statistical reports be brought to this commission on a quarterly basis, and ask Mr. Tiefink to work with the department to calendar these, and include the following information: the number of police public contacts, the number referred to housing, the number referred to services in addition to housing, the number referred to psychiatric care, the number of homeless victims and the type of crime, the number of homeless people who are arrested and for what charges, and again, the number of use of force incidences involving homeless individuals. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we need a motion on that, or do we? No? Okay. Okay, great. So given the short window of time that we have, and we have 19 cards for public comment?
Yes, sir.
We're going to limit public comment to 1 minute.
Okay. The first 5 speakers, the Red Chief Hunt, General Dogan, Michael Novick, Audrey George, and Mr. Herman.
I think that the comment should go back to 2 minutes because it's only like 10 speakers. But that's just my opinion. Matt Johnson, Chief Beck, I think you guys received my report in the mail and things like that. And really respectfully, I will pay for mediation so it don't go any further. I just really want you to know it's not personal. It's about how the meeting should be ran, and it's about how you guys run the police department. here again to make the same mistake twice and to think that I'm not going to hold you guys accountable for it. You guys are very wrong. I'm going to hold you guys accountable for it. But like I said, my first action is through mediation. I'll pay for it, you know, and with Justin Roman, Steve Rohde, and a whole bunch of other people that's in my corner, we don't want to see it next door. We want to see it back in the house. Please get it together, sir.
General Dogan.
General Dogan, Human Rights Decolonizer. Thank you, Shane, for putting this on. And me, myself, I'm looking for positive change, too. But like Sam Cooke said, change is a long time coming. You know, we've been at this ever since 2006 with Chief Bratton, with the SCI, all the way up to us walking down the street here today. All we see is just black men in handcuffs on Skid Row. You know, and we're saying it's time for a change, right? And we're also saying that, you know, at the rate LAPD is going and arresting people right now, by the time Triple H and H come around, everybody going to be in the county jail, right? So it's time for a real change. And then I got to also say something about the city, because we're here in their house, right? Last year I was here when they declared a homeless state of emergency. Mayor Garcetti and the council member Wesson, they created this new ad hoc committee. Last year they had 18 meetings. Every meeting was based on criminalization. In fact, the last day of the year before they ran out the building, they passed a new law, 8502, homeless man can't sleep in his car. So we need to change all that, stop the criminalization once again, you know, and then we're going to start seeing change. When the city stop making these anti-homeless laws and Chief Beck stop the enforcement, then we can see some real things that's moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Novick.
Yeah, if you want some policy recommendations, you should recommend that they decriminalize sleeping in your car. They should decriminalize living on the street. They should decriminalize keeping your possessions if you have no home. They should decriminalize drinking in public if you have to live your entire life in public. They should provide sufficient toilets and water fountains and showers for people who have no place else to use them. They should direct the LAPD to stop trying to corrupt the sanitation department, the housing department of the county, the mental health department into their CommStat program. And you should immediately direct the LAPD to make no application for any homeless service funds that were authorized by the voters of the city.
George, please.
Hi, I heard the first speaker use the word hope, and I'm pretty sure that there aren't any homeless people that would say that LAPD gives them any hope at all. Addressing homelessness is very complex, but cannot start with a dismissive approach to the human beings that comprise the houseless population. There are certain things that logic, compassion, common sense, and concerns about basic human rights and needs would tell us are just plain wrong. This would include anything that dehumanizes, criminalizes, and leaves the unhoused worse off than they were. In what universe would anyone with a lick of sense and empathy believe that confiscating and destroying houseless people's belongings is a good thing? This actually happens regularly, and it's just wrong. Change the laws and enforcement policies that enable this heartless reality. Please, someone tell me how this accomplishes anything but further victimization and trauma. One of the presenters mentioned falling back on the criminal justice system.
Thank you for your comments, ma'am.
With houseless folk causing problems repeatedly and those who don't want help from representatives of the LAPD. This should never happen.
Mr. Herman, followed by Eddie H. and Jojo Smith.
Mr. Johnson and Chief Charlie Bick will not be able to evade liability as a matter of law on the basis of qualified immunity. The Ninth Circuit's Manual of Module, Jury Instruction 9.34, 2007 edition, updated January 2017, reads in pertinent part, settle with Michael Hunt and don't cause any further liability against the City of Los Angeles and more so to all the ratepayers who demand an action of mediation. He's asking for mediation. And note to that, when Spiller was retaliated by LAPD and the Highway Patrol in Van Nuys by an assemblyman by the name of Matt and Mike Fuhrer of the City of LA. Stop stop retaliating against people who brought federal and Ninth Circuit lawsuits against you, because the action will be your responsibility of action, and you, Mr. Matt Johnson, and you, Mr. Charlie Beck, are on record. Stop retaliation against people with lawsuits against the City of Los Angeles.
Thank you, sir.
And LAPD.
The next speaker, Eddie H., followed by Jojo and Patricia Mendoza.
Eddie H., Los Angeles Community Action Network, LA CAN. I was really a little bit ambiguous about even coming up to this podium and this microphone. It's just one more time where the community has been disrespected. We can't even be afforded 2 minutes. 2 minutes, another 20 minutes of sitting in here after we've been in here for 3 hours. The disrespect continues, Matt Johnson. But I just want to say this. There's been a lot of conversations today about compassion and empathy and de-escalation. In the meeting we had with the mayor, July 29th of 2015, I shot an opening salvo to the mayor. I said to him, there is not now nor has there ever been a clear articulation of a comprehensive strategy concerning homelessness. Greg Spiegel was the homeless director, policy director at that time, before Lisa Oduna came. One thing that has happened since then that our language has been co-opted, but action has not happened. And we talk about compassion, and I heard the commander talk about 5611. It wasn't 6 months because they were trying to educate the public. It was 6 months because the department, the federal government said, thank you, sir, if you continue to put language inside of 5611 to criminalize the homeless, that money will be withheld from the city. So there is no compassion here. And we understand in real time and on the streets what is really happening, that we are being accosted, we're being criminalized, and in many instances we're being murdered at the hands of the LPD, which is the most murderous police force for the last 2 or 3 years in the country, leads the country again in shootings of unarmed individuals. So there is no compassion. And when we talk about de-escalation, you guys don't do de-escalation training. As a matter of fact, you're trained in escalation. Sir, can you when we talk about all the things that have been talked about today, it always leans forward on your behalf, but leans negatively to me. The commander came up at the Pete White so eloquently spoke about community-based solutions. He had to come up and give a 5-minute diatribe on the horrors of Skid Row. As a black man, I live in horror every day. My steps have to be calculated whether I walk to the store or walk down the street, because I could be shot dead for just looking like this. So don't tell us about de-escalation. Don't tell us about compassion. And don't tell us about the solutions that you guys don't have. We have solutions, and they will present it today. But you know what? We don't have a seat at the table. Thank you for your because you want the status quo to maintain itself. The same people saying the same things and doing the same thing. Insanity. Doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, but expecting different results. It ain't happening, Matt. It ain't happening. I'm putting all of you on notice.
Okay, thank you. Now
we're coming after you. Wherever you might be, we're coming after you. Because doing nothing is not an option. And we're not going to allow this to continue to go on. It is really unacceptable.
Jojo Smith, Los Angeles Community Action Network. We sit here every time y'all have one of these bullshit-ass meetings. You let LAPD take up all the time. When the public wants to speak, oh, you only get 1 to 2 minutes. Well, that is bull crap. Because every time we turn around, LAPD is killing us. I've been in Skid Row for 10 years. LAPD is not fighting crime. I used to sell drugs every day for 5 years. Never got arrested. The LAPD would come up to me and say, just get off my block today. But now that I'm organizing, in 2012, I was arrested 12 times for sitting on the sidewalk. Sitting on the sidewalk for being homeless. So we see where the money is going. Keep back keep getting this money to criminalize the homeless. This is a joke. Like everyone said, y'all lost. Because when we find out where we're at, we're coming through.
The next speaker, please. Patricia Mendoza, Dana Caesar, Oscar.
I was, with all due respect, if you guys remember me, I think I was here about less than a year ago, And I requested, with all due respect, if I can have a police report regarding a property that was stolen from me, that I've been talking to a detective 12 years ago. So the old Rampart Police Station, Chief Beck, he just used me as a guinea pig and never did anything. In 2014, I sent a letter. You did assign it to some detectives. I was locked up in a room by Detective Tapia. He bullied me and harassed me, put the finger in my face with another female woman. Not too long ago, I spoke to the Crime Division County Real Estate Department, and I spoke to a detective. He said that the responsibility of LAPD is to help me, provide me with the police report, and if you guys can help me, then he would help me, and he told me the process that I have to go through the county committee and the district attorney. And today, with all due respect, I would like to file many complaints of what's going on with the Rampart Police Station.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I will have someone come in.
Thank you.
Speak.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dana Caesar.
Hi, I'm Dana Caesar. I'm 55 years old. I've been homeless for 10 years. I've been on the street for 4, and I've been on Skid Row for about 1 month. And I'm here to really implore and encourage you guys to do some professional development. And I was really happy to hear the guy talk about collaboration and learning, because I'm being trafficked with the help of microchips. So I have 4 kinds of microchips in me, 2 of which are causing me a lot of problems. One chip is full of sedatives that can be released remotely with the use of a phone app. After I'm sedated, I'm led away, and I'm raped. These rapes are videotaped and shared electronically with a group of homeless men, after which I'm slandered as a prostitute. I know the individuals who were in charge of giving the order to implant me against my knowledge and against my consent. The other chip is...
Ma'am, thank you for your comments. I'll have someone speak to you.
The next speaker, please, Oscar, followed by Michael Williams and Christine Gatson.
Ma'am, can you please stop disrupting the meeting? Ma'am, you're disrupting the meeting. Thank you. Speaker. Ma'am, this is your last warning. Please stop disrupting the meeting. Sir, you're disrupting the meeting. Can you please stop disrupting the meeting? Okay. Sir?
I wanted to reiterate that we refuse to believe that Waukesha Wilson committed suicide in your jail cell. We refuse to believe that her family got a reliable investigation. We refuse to believe that it is just to hide all evidence from Waukesha Wilson's family. We refuse to believe that a historically corrupt and abusive police department should be allowed to investigate itself in cases of police brutality. And we refuse to believe that the LAPD oversight can bring us anything even close to justice. We know that Police Chief Charlie Beck likes to cover up his officers' crimes, and if you read his report to the Police Commission, it is clear that there are significant inconsistencies. The detention officers working during Waukesha's death said that they were warned by the previous shift that Waukesha was acting strange and being uncooperative. Yet the senior detention officer who was working the shift prior to them says he made no report of any inmate, and he did not even recall Waukesha Wilson. The one witness they have also has accounts inconsistent with what the staff reported that morning. The officers in charge of Waukesha did not even have the proper permission to leave her in a cell on her own.
Thank you for your comments.
Chief Beck's report didn't even mention that 20 minutes of footage was missing from that same morning, right, Chief?
Sir, thank you for your comments.
Right.
Your time is up.
The next speaker, please, Christine Gatson, followed by Wayne Spindler and Trevor Gerard.
We want the footage, Chief.
Wayne Spindler, Trevor Gerard, Sonia Hernandez, John Walsh,
We get the 20 minutes of footage, Chief. Where's it at?
John Walsh blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org or J. Walsh Confidential tweeting at Hollywood Dems. Let's Why are you here? Because we passed a 0.25% sales tax for homelessness forever. In the next 20 years, there's going to be over $1 billion more than we have now. And the poverty pimps and the police have to make a deal. Because the poverty pimps are as invested in homelessness as the police are. Come on. And I want to tell you, there are very few Hispanics on the street here in LA homeless. And I'm down there occasionally. And you didn't see too many up here. And you want to know why the Hispanics aren't here? And you want to know why it's black and white? Because the Hispanics, when they hit rock bottom, the Hispanics, they go back to their family and are taken in. 0.25%, $1 billion, and you will spend it on anything but homelessness.
And the final three speakers, Hamid Khan, Iman Michelle Autry, and Quasi Kruman.
I think it's this morning's or this day's proceedings need to give us a pause as well, because what it really signifies is the cruelty and the failure of a system that a police commission has to hold hearings on homelessness. I mean, let's sit with that for a second. In a state that boasts to be the 6th largest economy in the world, a city that raises a large percentage of this country's GDP, what does it show? It shows the utter failure of the leadership in this city. It shows the complete neglect from the system in this country. It shows a complete irony that here we are speaking about homelessness. Because what has happened is that culturally, politically, in our minds, in our practice, in our intent, in our thought, homelessness has been normalized and pathologized as a criminal act. It's been pathologized as a criminal act. It goes back to what Rush Limbaugh and other people would talk about personal responsibility. And because it's been pathologized as a criminal act, so we have to police our way out of these problems. We have to police our way out of all of these problems. Whereas now what we have created, these open area containment zones, where the undesirable, the surplus humanity has to go stay and be experimented on.
Call the next speaker, please.
And I just want to finish by saying, Matt Johnson, because you are responsible for this, that you are now counting time from the people when you gave the cops so much time to speak about it. And let me end by saying that it's the same community that is being experimented on. The city attorney's office was here before. They're going to be experimented on with the predictive algorithms, predictive prosecution, the same thing about body cameras, the same thing about CCTV, the same thing about broken windows policing, which is discredited. So at least one thing you can do, Shane Goldsmith, if you're leading this thing, to call for an end to the Safer Cities Initiative and broken windows policing. That'll be the first act that you should take. Or it's reset now. Thank you.
Iman Michelle.
Yes, you're engineering homelessness, you're engineering the prison population, and you're incriminating not just the homeless and poor people, you're incriminating single black women, single women. I also have been experimented on, hypnotized. I wake up with meal marks. I don't even take medication, okay? In and out, passworded, just like this woman. This is a prototypical type of experiment for your New World Order, population, mind control, depopulation, mass manipulation for the New World Order. So you see, I'm not the only one. Most women don't know that they're being serviced ritualistically, and then they're being shot up with heroin, the male hormone to make them shrink in size, like this woman was petite like I am, passed around to your Secret Service, anyone in the street that wants to have the password to get in and out on the women that they consider not good enough for a house. Do you understand? So I'm exposing this in maintenance of that status quo and the exploitation of women. I'd also like to expose the sex trafficking ring, which your police are aware of. Again, I've been called baby by a police officer. I have been offered, the officer offered to show me his power tool. A Mexican man that said, you know, kill her, matala, F her, put her in her place. There is an incredible attack on women as well as poor people, homeless women, and not just black women, as you can see. A I also previously last week spoke on reversal of incrimination, where you are incriminating not just the victim, accusing us of being the aggressor, when it was actually the male trafficker or the police officer to justify putting us in jail or eventually murdering us, claiming that they feared for their lives.
Ma'am.
Right, or that we committed suicide, claiming that we were suicidal. This is a lie. It's an extermination of black people, an extermination, a cover-up of people that you are using as guinea pigs and experimenting on. So I realize I'm exposing that. And it's not only white male supremacy, white Zionist male Jewish supremacy, and keeping the money in the house for you house Negroes. I didn't say house nigger, I said house Negro. Okay, so hopefully it wasn't offensive to you. And
if you don't have a seat, I'm going to have to adjourn.
No, but that's you're liable for the shots and for the extermination and people who are put in the trash, because it's beyond racism. It's an attack on humanity. We are not trash. We are human beings.
Do I have a second to it? No.
My name is Kwasi Nkrumah. I'm the co-chair of the Martin Luther King Coalition of Greater Los Angeles. And I've already stated on numerous occasions that I feel that this body is dysfunctional, that it does not really serve a function of protecting the public in Los Angeles. It should be replaced by an elected board. We need to put it on the ballot and take it out of your hands. I'm only here to show support for LA CAN and the organized advocates of the homeless here in Los Angeles. And that's not a favor, that's a responsibility. Dr. King was assassinated 49 years ago today. And when he died, his efforts were all bent toward the elimination of poverty in America. He was organizing the Poor People's Campaign. I was 13 years old. I was working on that campaign. I've been in his movement for 6 years at that point. Now, I'm kind of old now, but I'll keep getting up out of my bed to make an appearance to support the struggle for human rights today. We are in trouble as a society. We have a perverse clown in the White House.
Thank you for your comments, sir.
And it makes us wonder if we have nothing but perverse crowds at every level of government today.
The comment cards.
There is no crime in being without housing. The crime is creating homelessness.
Motion for adjournment. All in favor? Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Hi, I'm Cindy and I'm in Little Tokyo, and you're watching Channel 35, Your City, Your Channel.